do consider speeding up with settings to consume this content in a fraction of the time. Newbie Dice Podcast.
Hi, this is Joey Greek.
I'm Adam Ballard.
Hi, I'm Jeff Traish.
And I'm Paige, and welcome to Newbie Dice Podcast episode 11, where we're going to discuss the Clash of Kings 2024 changes. So I have a whole host of esteemed guests with me. And if you don't know who they are, Jeff is a multiple times Australian master, and Adam was last year's master, so he's already a has-been by now.
So am I.
And Joey Greeks, a very prominent player as well. I think you recently won a tournament, did you, Joey?
That was a year ago, so thanks for reminding me. It's been a while. A year ago and 2 weeks ago, I won Nerdhammer.
All right. And for Jeff and Adam, they have been on this exact same podcast 1 year ago discussing the Big Red Book. And if you're curious about their origin stories, you are able to hear it over at that podcast. But Joey's brand new to the show. So Joey, please introduce yourself and your gamer origin story.
All right. Well, my name's Joey Greek. You've probably seen me on Facebook. Probably the only Greek in Kings of War. I've been playing since around 2016, 2015. I started playing in college of all things, so I'm a young one. Been playing competitively since around 2017. Most notably, outside of the Nerdhammer win, I went 4-0 at the U.S. Masters for 4 straight years, and then went 0-2 for 3 of those 4 years. So I'm really good at day ones, and I'm really poor at day twos. Broke the curse a couple years ago, so it's been going really good for me overall this year, but nowhere near the prestige that Jeff and Adam are having.
Right, and what was the tournament you won last year? I remember seeing you.
It was Nerdhammer GT.
Wow, so you broke the curse and
Ratkin.
won it. That was before Shredders became Ignore Concealed?
Yes, that was before Shredders were nerfed. They were a top 2 artillery, and then they became a bottom 4.
Yeah, Ignore Concealed is not doing great to say the least. So, well, welcome. So, thank you very much, each and every one of you, for coming on this show. I know it's going to be a mammoth task to record for a few hours, so I really appreciate that you take the time out to record this with me. So with that, we're going to talk about the past year. How has the Big Red Book shifted the meta in general? So I would like to talk about some of the biggest faction winners. So I'll just start things off before the rest of the hosts chime in. For me, the changes to the Phoenix has really bumped up Basilea and Salamanders, both these armies. So Basilea already has a speed list, right? And with the Phoenix, it provides so much utility in shooting. Firstly, it shoots and be able to take out chaff and threaten stuff. And then it could heal if the opponent has better shooting and start to hurt its expensive units. And then it could charge in and chaff things up. With 16-18 nerf, it could also very possibly hold the unit for more than a turn, which is awesome for just a 145 point package. And that really tunes the Basilean lists up to 11. And even a balanced Basilean list also performs very well with the Phoenix. So I think Basilea did gain a lot from the Phoenix buff, as well as Salamanders too. Not as familiar with Salamanders, but definitely such an awesome piece. Gives a lot of options to whichever army it's in. So that's one of my input for last year. Anyone would like to chime in or what they think is doing well for last year after the Big Red Book released?
Well, I'm trying to actually remember what changes happened in the Big Red Book besides Nightstalkers getting nerfed. But I think at least locally, the number one army that I saw going up was Ogres. I don't know if they got much, if any, changes, but they were definitely strong this last year in the tournament scene. Between the Warlocks with the Lightning Bolt spam, Nom was pretty good. I think Nom ended up going up a little bit in points, and Siege Breakers went up a little bit in points, but we still saw them performing extremely well even after those slight nerfs. So they were definitely one of the best. That's true. They did lose that particular build, so
They get the
That was 2 updates ago.
Yeah. The main thing that changed was Nomogrok going up in points and the warriors unlocking were limited to 3 regiments. Was what I can remember off the top of my head. I'm looking at other changes. Siegebreaker went up in points.
I guess they got nerfed, quote unquote, but they were still top of the tournament scene, I feel like. And that might have been just me living so closely to Jeff Shulkin and him playing it for the entire year, but he and many other people I know saw success with Ogres this last
even
year.
Stephen Devonish just won Australian, was it Masters? Masters, right?
Yep.
Yeah, with a pretty interesting list. It has 2 Crocodile Wranglers in it and a Berserker Horde. So it's a very interesting list.
very varied list. It wasn't over the top in any way.
Quite surprising that I don't see a lot of greater air elemental lists. A few months ago, when I was doing research for Dash 28 article, I did see a Spanish player win one of their tournaments with a Sylvan Kin greater air elemental list. But other than that, I don't see it cropping up in American tournaments and even Australian tournaments. What do you guys think?
It's here in the East Coast. Devlin Smith has got like 2 or 3 best generals with it this year with the Sylvan King Greater Elemental. He's gone undefeated at least 2 or 3 times this year alone. Atlantic City Open was won by Mike Adkins, running Greater Elemental Force of Nature. So it's been around. I don't think you include it with Big Red Book because that buff was also 2 years ago, and it just didn't get the nerf that everyone thought it would get.
But it is getting nerfed this time around.
I came up against a few of them at the pilgrimage in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Beaner was running it back then.
Yeah, there was
Because
a
Beaner was
couple of
running it
lists.
for a while.
Yeah, so I still found them very hard to contain.
Yeah.
And I'd be remiss to not point out on the East Coast, or the Green Lady has just been everywhere. That's another army that got its buffs 2 years ago, but I think people really figured it out over the Big Red Book, figured out how to build the Forsaken. It turns out the answer is really simple. Take 3 Pegasus, take 3 Unicorn, and then kind of go from there. But that's an army that it didn't get buffed in the Big Red Book, but it got very popular and I think crowds out a lot of other Alpha Strikes due to it existing.
And that is getting hit this clash as well.
Well, Joey, I'm surprised you haven't brought it up, but dwarves, at least in the US, have just been ridiculous. I think they were the largest seen army at Masters for us, with 8 or 9 of the 64 players playing them. So that was
almost half
pretty
of
impressive.
Australia was dwarf, right?
Yes.
Out of 16.
And dwarves. And they were they were more than half they were half.
Yeah, over here along the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, it's usually been very dwarf heavy, regardless of where dwarves are. Just people had their dwarf army 10 years ago, and that's their shtick. They stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 8 out of the 9 American Master players, this wasn't their first time playing dwarves at a Masters event. So they're longtime dwarf players. And then you have Tom Anus, who is like, ooh, I see something shiny, and I'm going to go play with it.
And to top it all off, dwarfs got even more love in this clash. So we'll talk
about that.
We will go through them. How about withdraw? Have you guys been playing mainly with withdraw because it has turned optional in the Big Red Book?
Yeah, most definitely.
We kept withdraw in Australia.
Most every event in the US uses withdraw. Like 1 or 2 might not, and it's kind of more of here's something different appeal for it. But generally, everybody uses withdraw in the US.
Yeah. I think it's mostly because this edition, the 3rd edition, was built with withdraw initially, and removing it we find so many gaps in gameplay and being locked into certain things that just feel bad. So I think that withdraw is something that if being removed, it needs to be an addition change with many other rules around it being changed.
Yeah, I've been playing mainly with withdraw, but we are going to have a Clash of Kings Asia in January, and the decision was to play without withdraw. The initial thought was to keep it easier for newer players, but we have certain negative experiences crop up because there is no option for withdraw. One big issue when you don't have the withdraw rule is when you are wavered from the flank. When someone charges you in the flank and you're wavered, because you can't bounce away from the enemy, when you reform, you will end within an inch. So you can't even reform to face the guy that just flank charged you. And so you're
Unless you're
just
like
stuck
an
doing
infantry horde,
nothing.
right?
Unless you are deeper. Even chariots, you can't do it, right? Even a chariot hero, you can't do
An
it.
infantry horde in the flank should be able to turn.
Yeah,
but
infantry
at
horde.
that point, you would need to space a lot of
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, but infantry hordes, I think, or cavalry hordes are the only base size that would allow a change withdraw, or without a withdraw, allow for repositioning.
Yeah.
And I guess those large infantry legions of ogres that we see are the only other exceptions.
Cavalry hordes, another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened in one of my players' games was it roughly went this way. So his horde got charged by a large infantry hero in the flank. So, those only have 5 attacks. In the flank, it's 10. It's not devastating, right? But that 10 attacks, and the enemy rolled hot for the nerf roll. So it got a lucky waiver. So he had his horde stuck for a turn. He couldn't even turn around to face that large infantry hero, right? And he has another horde that's stuck behind that horde. Can't move because the horde in front got wavered. And so the next turn come along, that large infantry hero dealt the average amount of wounds, rolled average, and wavered it again. And then he got stuck again can't do anything for the 2 hordes. And then the third turn came along. The large infantry, with its attack, rolled low for nerf and wavered it again. So got stuck for 3 turns and oh my goodness. That was
game-winning waivers.
That was such. Yeah, that's one thing, right? Waiver should not be worse than a rout in terms of how it affects the player. So yeah, hopefully this will be looked at in 4th edition, not just about the optional withdraw, but the effect on waiver on the game. Sometimes it's too good. It's better than routing the unit. Yeah, and Adam suggested something in one of the podcasts, which Matt Carmack said that he also came up with the idea before, which is that withdraw half the attacks like what Devastated is. So the unit can still fight, and then the maneuvering options are still there. So you don't get stuck whenever you get wavered. Jeff, you'd like to say something?
Well, I prefer withdraw for sure. I think it adds a lot more to the tactics of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Those situations that you just spoke about, that's not a good thing in a game, no matter what you're doing, friendly game or competitive. Yeah, the -1 to hit I've found is a decent enough hit to it.
Yeah, I find it very rarely withdraw to corkscrew anymore. It's pretty unusual. If I'm going to do a corkscrew, it's because the unit was built to do it and has Pathfinder Nimble already there. So, like a Dread Fiend or something else in that scope. So I don't normally withdraw and corkscrew too much. What it's much better for is when you checkerboard, you can withdraw back up, create that space as you get that extra inch, and then you can get flanks with something else that's not affected by the withdraw.
Yeah, sidestep and whatnot, right?
Right.
Yeah, and my only issue is that -1, when you withdraw and charge something else, is that the square bases don't have to withdraw to charge something else, and then they can just do that without a -1 penalty. I would have rather have it applied to if you're charging someone else than what you're engaged with at the start, then you get a -1 penalty. I mean, these are small things at the end of the day. Yep. All right, let's go into Clash 24, which is what everyone's waiting to listen to about. I will just quickly read through some of the overarching changes, and we'll just have a quick comment on that. So I'll just start with this patch over here. Main thing, the casters, they have been stripped of their base spells, and then their points have been dialed back. And at the same time, the RC had taken a chance to look at the point cost of the spellcasters. With their base spells taken away, it's very easy to tell whether they're overcosted or undercosted for their points. So some got a reduction in points and some got an addition in points. Phalanx units across the board has dropped in price. Titans are all now unit strength 2, and snare units also have dropped in price. Most chariots with range options have their ranged ability dropped with an option to repurchase it again. Most chariots also have their cost reduced and also gain brutal. Regeneration units tend to have their points dropped as well, and pot shots has been removed from the game. Anyone have any comments for these changes?
I think they're just clean. I think it makes the game simpler in a lot of ways and just easier. There's been some talk about, complexity creeping into Kings the more and more we play, but, a lot of these changes that are just general across the board are really making the game easier in a lot of ways. So I like all of them, and I think that all the units that are affected by any of these changes were needed.
I think I'll read a little bit further because I realized there's some more stuff down here. Redeploy has been coded because there are more and more units popping up with the ability to redeploy. So it's has official rules that after both players completed their deployment, everyone picks up their units, and then the person who first finished deploying will start deploying, and then you take turns until everyone is done. Ordered March is a new rule for dwarves, which allows them to pivot 90 degrees while they move at the double. And Secure Position is an interesting one and is mainly applied to certain war engines. Not everyone got it, but it makes the unit this unit is considered a scoring unit with a unit strength of 0. Now, a few people might be confused with that, so I'm going to try and break it down. When you're scoring unit means you are able to score an objective token. But of course, if somebody else is contesting it with unit strength, that means you automatically lose controlling that objective. Scoring unit is also allowed to pick up a loot token. So your war engines can pick up a loot token and shuffle 5 inches up the board eventually to get across the center line. They still can't move at the double, so they're not going to run very far with it. One interesting thing to take note is how does Secured Position affect a zone control scenario like Control? Because if my war engine with Secured Position is the only unit in that sector, do I win that sector? That is a bit of a question mark, but if I read through the rules, my answer would be no, because in Control, it says you total up the unit strength. A scoring unit with unit strength of 0 is still a total number of 0, and the opponent also has 0. So even though your war engine has a qualifier of a scoring unit, your unit strength is still 0. So when we total up our unit strength, you're 0, I'm 0, so nobody controls that sector. Is that your understanding?
Sounds correct. The way you're putting it. If you're reading it by the rules.
That is how I read it. I think they're going to need to throw a little bit of an FAQ because the rulebook also says a scoring unit has to have a unit strength of 1 or more, which this breaks, but that's probably going to be in some FAQ whenever that comes out. But I believe it's not going to count for control, invade, or hold the line.
Adam.
I spoke too soon. This is the one rule that I don't think was a good change. I think this particular rule is adding complexity unnecessarily to the game, where the other rules that like Ordered March, it adds a complexity, but I think it's to benefit the overall game. So I don't plan on playing any units that have Secure Position, and I'll figure out how it works when I play against somebody that actually takes it. So
I am.
Yeah.
So there you go, Adam. I do want to clarify.
We've never played, Joey.
We have not. Well, one thing with redeploy, the big change for if you ran the captain or the Ratkin formation is both of those redeploys were before scout. It came up a fair bit when I was running Ratkin with the formation. You would have to do your redeploy before Gladestalkers would do their scout moves. So you can't see where the scout is going to go first. Now you can. So it is a slight buff to those two specific ones.
Yeah, Secured Position is quite weird because we have this question of, how does it work with this scenario and that scenario? If they were to introduce this rule, I thought it'd be great if they add some explanation. Then it'll be clear with everybody, because this is a rule that breaks a few norms of the rules, right? It breaks the norms of war engine rules and it breaks the norm of scenario rules. So some explanation.
And I think the big thing is that it only matters in some of the scenarios, and it only is on some certain war machines. So it's just so sporadic in where it actually works and what it actually works on that it's confusing because of that.
I think it could be that the dwarves get a pilot test of this rule, and if it's accepted, they will spread it across to the other war engines. But I may be wrong.
I don't think we'll ever see it on Goblins.
Damn it.
That would be the one that I don't think we'd ever see Goblins getting their
or we see Goblins going up in points.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm not in favor of this rule as well. I think it's a bit too complex for what it adds to the game. All right, so with that, I'm going to go down a little bit further. Iron Resolve now has an N value, so it can be Iron Resolve 1, 2, or 3. Ages of the Elohai have been modified to match the new wording. So Boots of the Levitation only allowed on infantry and heavy infantry only, you used to be able to get it on a mounted hero. So your archmages can run 18 inches and cast Alchemist Curse. Now it's no longer that. And on top of that, Alchemist Curse has been hit with a 10-point increase, and Blizzard has been buffed to also freeze the enemy, gave the enemy the frozen rule. Do you think the Boots of Levitation plus the Alchemist Curse is a little bit heavy-handed, or do you think it's justified? I'll let Adam talk about this first.
100%. As somebody that abused it, I strongly believe this is probably the best change balance-wise in the entire edition. So Boots of Levitation on speed 9, speed 10, speed 8 even is just ridiculous. And then giving the best spell in the game to them was already just extremely powerful. So I think knowing that all mages were getting stripped of their base spell, so a mage can just be an Alchemist Curse mage without having to take anything else. I think this was a good preemptive change, knowing that Boots of Levitation mounted mage was going to be in every army if they were able to take that as cheaply as Elves were in some other factions before. So I approve of these changes, even though it hurts the armies that I've played.
Well,
The
interestingly, the Succubi can take Alchemist Curse, and it's a flying infantry, so it could still take Boots
but
of
he's
Levitation.
only spellcaster level 1,
Right,
so
so
that
you can.
starts bring it back a bit.
Otherwise, you're running a Lich King with the boots. And that's your fastest tier 3 option, I believe.
How fast is he?
Speed 7.
7.
base.
7
Yeah.
flying.
No
He
more
lost
fly.
No more fly. All right.
but he's flat speed 7.
All right. With that, let's go into the army rules. So first up, we have the Twilight Kin. And I'm not going to read through the entire Twilight Kin list. It's been out in the ether for quite a while already. I think everyone's got a chance to read about Twilight Kin. So we'll just straight away jump into our thoughts. And to lead this portion, I'll have Joey.
All right. Before I start, did we want to tackle Ordered March when we get to Dwarves?
We
Any
will
of the dwarves?
we'll tackle that when we get to the dwarves, I guess. Yep.
So Twilight Kin, I'm not going to go over the whole army. Y'all can look that one up. But where I think Twilight Kin are going to sit competitively is they're really, really good at being a balanced army. They are a balanced army killer and a balanced army kind of just perfect. They remind me a lot of second edition Rats, where they do a lot of the same thing Ratkin used to do. And one of the things that I think we're seeing with the new armies, when we're looking at what Riftforged got in this update, what Halflings started out with, and what Twilight Kin are at, is Ratkin have kind of been a very good baseline with a ton of auras, approach about having good options kind of across the board. They're also not tending to be crazy fast. Riftforged are the exception to that. Twilight Kin are not an army that's going to beat you with speed 10. They can bring some speed 10, but it's only with one dragon, and you're probably only ever going to see one of that Void Lurker, just because the Void Lurker upgrade is very good and kind of fixes the profile for me. But where Twilight Kin are going to kind of sit, I think, is they're going to be a huge counterpunch army. Damn near every unit in this list can be defense 6 for a turn if it really wants to be, with Blood Hex being a once per turn for +1 defense. And then I think until Crones get some kind of change, maybe they get a weakness debuff or a -1 to hit or something if there's cover with their damage weakness, you're probably going to take 3 Crones in every list. It's basically where it starts. It's kind of silly not to. I think they're in the same spot Hexcasters were back in Abyssal Dwarves when they first came out, or Crones are kind of in that same spot. So we're at Nerdhammer, we saw the Lightning Bolt build. That did pretty good. I think both versions of it went 3-1-1 or 3-2, somewhere in that range. And then Corey Reynolds finished 3rd overall with a counterpunch impaler weakness build. The army does struggle into alpha. Very heavy alpha can be a problem, particularly Order of the Green Lady. That's been what's beat it so far that I've seen. Mostly because if a list has enough heal so that the weakness isn't really pinging damage and putting pressure, Twilight Kin doesn't have a whole lot of outreach. So a lot of their best units are speed 7 at best. So they can't really force the engagement. So Order of the Green Lady can take their time, work their way around, and force you to build a castle and look for that weakness in it. So that's where Twilight Kin's probably going to struggle, is going into alpha, but they are an absolute monster when they don't go into something high skew like that.
Right. I have a rude awakening of the weakness triple weakness crones. I charged Grony Snark into a unit of the lightning bolt casters, thinking, okay, I got them shut down. Nothing is in line of sight to hit Grony, but the lightning bolt unit just countercharged, and the 3 crones just cast weakness into Grony. Firstly, it could cast into combat, right? So it dealt a bunch of damage, and then the lightning bolt casters just had to pling one to cause a nerf check, and it wavered Grony. So that was quite a rude awakening. Yeah, weakness being a spell that's not supposed to deal damage, it's supposed to be a debuff spell, so you are able to cast it into combat. There's no negative modifiers, and with the crones being able to deal damage at piercing 1, that just brings it a little bit over the top, in my opinion. If they would like to change it, if they would like to nerf the crones taking weakness a little bit without changing all the rules of weakness, maybe just making it weakness 3 might help a little bit. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think weakness 3 or non-piercing damage would be just the slight debuff that might be needed at this point. But I kind of disagree with Joey when he said that 3 of these guys are going to be in every list, just because every single hero choice in this army is so good that if you take 3 of them, and one thing to mention before I get in that is that I think that Twilight Kin have an issue with unlocks where they have several unlocks, but some of the units that you unlock with, you aren't getting an abundance of unlocks. There's no super cheap unit. There's no Goblin Rabble. There's no 100-point regiment unlock in this list. So
the hordes are all like 200 to 260 because you're probably going to kit out your infantry hordes.
Right. So your void skiffs at like 150 are one of your cheaper unlocks, or you can do regiments of some of the basic infantry for 120 to 130 points. But you're not going to have an abundance of heroes in this army. So 3 crones, while it's good, I don't think will be the norm. I think you'll definitely see 1 to 2, but man, Mikael is so good in the army. He is amazing, and he is the living legend of the army. So Bleakheart's still an extremely good choice. Navigator, with the buffs that it can give based off keywords, is I think really the bread and butter of the army. So an army that doesn't take at least 1 navigator, I feel like, is missing something. So I think it's going to be tough to get the 3 crones in every list.
Mainly because of the unlocks and the good heroes you want to take, right? Not that the 3 crones isn't good. But
no. 3 crones is great, but if you're leaving home without a navigator, if you're leaving home without Mikael, then you're just missing something else for getting the 3 crones, right. I feel.
I'm thinking most Twilight Kin lists are going to want 5 hero slots. Like you want to get to 5.
I agree.
It's a good range. I don't know that Mikael is as important to it. I really rate the Bound Void Lurker with the upgrade. Getting that 1820 in there is just fantastic for that profile. But I like dragons a lot, so I'm weird. If you're going to spend that amount of points, though, it's up there in that inclusion. But I do think that like 2 crowns is probably where I would draw the line as my minimum. The third one, you can take or leave. You can bring Lathael because she's basically a crown. You're not getting weakness, but you're getting Bane Chant. You're getting other things with that slot. And yeah, you're going to see 1 navigator. The only list that won't run the navigator is the boat spam, which did win Forged GT. 11 regiments of boats didn't run the navigator because it didn't really need to. Ran the captains instead. But yeah, I think you're outside of that one specific list, you're probably going to see a balanced spread of monsters. You're going to be bringing Mind Screeches, and you're going to need a lot of hero slots.
Yeah, that one runs the captain because of Rally 1 Corsair only, right? So you bring 2, you get a Rally 2. Is that what was ran? I'm
triple
curious
captain,
about...
And that guy is also, I think, if you're taking Corsairs, like he's a must-have, at least 1, maybe more. Because his 2 abilities, 1 to get just 7 attacks for 10 points, so plus 3 attacks for 10 points, or plus 1 nerve and become fearless for 10 points. Like while you're just 80 points base and you have inspiring already, and like you're just such a good individual that every other individual in the game is crying at these options with the Void Captain.
Varangur is spending 60 points more for that.
Yeah.
just to get a 7
Well,
attack hero in there.
Yeah, and they're not rallying. They're not, they still struggle with the true support of the list. I feel like, which the Rally One Corsairs really opens up for this list.
Yeah,
Mm.
and they rally each other. So like if you want to run a 3-ball of them, you can get them to
Yep.
dash 17. They won't do a whole lot of damage, but they can be really annoying for a turn.
7 attacks is
Yeah.
amazing, right? It just sits behind providing a buff for 90 points, which isn't expensive. And when things get near, you can charge in and add 7 attacks to that combat. Wow,
Yeah,
Right. And we should also mention the formation while we're talking about rally. I think the formation is excellent for Twilight Kin that are looking to go the Corsair route. Taking 2 troops of Fleet Wardens that become fearless, and then a regiment of Impalers that get Rally One Corsairs as well. I mean, you can also give those troops of Fleet Wardens the +1 nerve ability, so they're a -13 base, rallied up to a potential -15 in a troop. It's just disgusting, really, how much nerve this army could get. And like Joey said, if you back it up with weakness and you back it up with the +1 defense for a turn item, this army is surprisingly durable.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when this army was released on Companion, a lot of people are praising it. I think it's a really good army design as well. And it's not, by and large, I don't think this army is broken or overpowered, overtuned, just that this is the new standard that army lists should be created. Should take this as the gold standard on how a army list should look like, or rather a faction list where you can build a list from. What do you guys think?
I'll let Traish go.
Well, I haven't seen much of it. I'm learning more now than I don't have the book yet, but I'd say give it a bit of time, get them on the table. They sound very scary with what you can do, but that happens with a lot of new things. So I pretty much just leave it till it gets on the table and start facing it, because I have no idea on half of these combinations. So I'll learn as I go, probably on the wrong end of it. But yeah, looks very good.
Well, I agree with you, Paige. I don't think it's broken by any means. I think it's definitely high on the competitive tier list. But I think the thing that makes it to where it's not broken is the fact that there's so many good options, but you're limited on how many of those things you can take. So you really have to figure out what is the ideal combination for the way you want to play. And I think that's truly what every army should be built around, is having a plethora of good options and not having just, oh, well, this is the one way to play this army competitively and leave it at that. I think Twilight Kin, we're going to be seeing many different play styles, and I think we're going to see many of those succeed in tournament scenes.
My favorite thing with this army is it's not particularly fast, so it plays within its speed 6 bubble. And it's just going to exist within kind of that speed 6-7 bubble. Also, it has some very obvious weaknesses. Every unit wants you to be in front of it, which, while that's true for most of Kings of War, it's not like, say, Dwarves, where Dwarves can give you a flank because they have the defense 6. If you flank an elf unit, or a Twilight Kin unit, even if they pop Blood Hex, they still have to worry. Impalers are weak to the flank. Both their infantry hordes have phalanx and snare, so they want to be forward facing. So if you have an army that is faster than it, you have a really obvious pathway to beating this.
Does the navigator having these specific auras that hit certain keywords only, does it force you to build towards a certain keyword in each list that you make?
I think 1 or 2. Yeah. And then I think you can also just rely on the navigator when it comes to a certain battle unit. So you build a block of Twilight Elf keyword unit, and you want to have that unit be your combat focus, hitting hard. So then the navigators giving them vicious. But I think there's also quite a few of the choices that we're going to see in the game have multiple keywords. I believe the Impalers, the Reapers, or not the Reapers, what are they called? The Ravenders? Not Ravenders. The
Wranglers?
The Wranglers. The Wranglers are
not Wranglers. One up. Up one. Sorry. The Mutants, those guys. I think that you're going to see, Mutants, you're going to see Impalers, and those guys have multiple keywords in them. as well as many other units in the army. So I don't think you have to build around just one. I think most of the lists are going to build around two in most cases.
I'd also say that if you're building around, say, the infantry units, you don't even need the navigator, right? It is cuttable at that point. It's how much do you value the vicious aura versus, say, another captain. So there's a lot of optionality based on just which unlocks you took. Because impalers make a lot of sense to run with navigators. It's not as necessary if you're running fleet wardens. It's nice to have, but if you don't got that slot, you can take that out.
Yeah, I mean, Impalers can get Aura, Stealthy, Spell Ward from the Navigators. And when it's in combat, you can switch it on to Vicious, is what they have option to, right? And next is, I'd like to give a shout out to the Corsair Wranglers. A lot of people look at the funky range attack and just write the unit off. But even if you just remove this range attack, this is a really respectable elf unit because it's speed 7. It has more than the average number of attacks, 14, and it is stealthy. So it's actually a really good elf profile. And that funky ranged attack that it has is just an extra icing on the cake. Just a shout out to that one. And this could be something you use to unlock regiment unlocks as well. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, which was these Void Skiff spams. What makes this spam strong? Is it the ranged attacks? I think one thing is it has access to blood hacks, and in the army of weakness, it can be really durable. It's a Corsair that gets rallying. I'm not sure how good the ranged attack is. If you read the ranged attack, it's pretty good, but the main downside is you have to shoot from the side. If you have enough of it, does that mean you can just all turn sideways and just kill things and it doesn't matter that you're facing sideways? Yeah, some of you have seen it on the table. Do comment on how that list works.
I hadn't seen it on the table. That was at Forge GT, which I went to a few years ago, but that is in Alabama and it's a solid 16-hour drive for me. So I've only done that one once. The way that Void Skiff list works, it was 2,400 points, which does mean that you have to take it with a grain of salt. If you're talking 2,300, something needs to be cut. It probably goes from 11 Void Skiffs to 10 at that point level, but 11 Void Skiffs, 3 captains, 3 crones. The captains all had the 7 attack, I believe, and the crones were weakness. And the main idea is that if 1 or 2 of your Void Skiffs are eligible to be charged, and you can kind of control that because they do fly and they have the nimble, and you range out the charges so that you pop blood hacks, you throw the weakness on what can charge that 1 or 2 Void Skiff. Their defense 6 for that turn, 16, 18. So that is a Earth Elemental Horde that you're running into. And then you hit that, and then you get swarmed. And if they decide not to charge, you back those up, rotate another 2 in, make them defense 6 for that turn. And you have so many that it's really hard to get that trade advantage, because when we're talking 11 chariot regiments with 16 attacks, they do hit on 4s, but there's enough room for volatility in that list where if it has 1 bad charge, that's fine. There's 3 more chariots to go clean it up. It's got the weakness to poke out that extra wound. So it has a lot of sort of like variability, denial, or prevention just by taking so many and by being defense 6 when it needs to be. It is, however, a pretty high skill cap army, I think, because if you mistime something or if you don't get everything off the way you want it, it could probably go pretty bad. But we've only seen it for 5 games, so hard to see that bear out.
So are you throwing 1 unit up to be defense 6 to be charged while the rest are turning sideways and shooting at the enemy to pressure them?
I have no idea exactly how he played it. I didn't get to watch any of the games. I've just heard, and I've heard it wasn't fun to play against.
No, wouldn't be.
So
I think another thing as well is the tournament this was played in was the Southeast, which is pretty notorious for being a heavy shooting scene. And initially I thought that these Void Skiffs would just get shot to hell. But again, it comes back to this army is surprisingly durable because the weakness will affect enemy shooting as well. So with 3 weakness casters, you're reducing the damage output of 3 of the enemy's range units coming back at you. And then, like Joey said, if you have a couple of units in cover, they're not going to shoot those. So the units that are out of cover that have, multiple units can see with clear line of sight, that's the one that's going to pop the blood hex for the turn. So it actually has pretty good durability in the range combat, because then you can just shoot back at them, or you can just run them down. Being speed 7, nimble and flying, you should be able to overwhelm the shooting units before they can really put a dent in your list.
Right.
You're very
Okay.
free to throw away the first like 2 or 3 that get damaged too.
Right, because you have 11, right? There's so
Downside
much
to it.
redundancy. So much redundancy. All right, with that, I think we've covered Twilight Kin enough. We're going to move back to the rest of the factions. So I'll start off by going through Abyssal Dwarves, and they got a lot of changes. So I'll just speed read through them. All the infantry dwarves got ordered much. That would be the Berserkers, Black Souls, Decimators, and Immortal Guard. The Berserkers get Universal and Snare instead of the conditional ones. And Decimators get 14-inch shooting. Immortal Guard gets to buy Crushing Strength 1 for 10/15 points. Abyssal Half-Breeds got +1 nerf and another 5-point discount. Grotesques, I think they go up in points to 150, 250.
Points.
Yeah, but they gain Fury Strider. Dragonfire team, they went up to 14-inch shooting and also speed 5 and defense 5. Heavy Mortar gets secure position. Rocket Launcher gets secure position and 4 attacks. The Titans, which are Obsidian, Greater Obsidian, Hellfane, and Infernoc, they are unit strength 2. The Overmaster on foot. It used to have a Strider infantry aura that stops him from taking items. He could take items now. Ironcaster stripped of base Fireball, but I think the Fireball you can purchase is also higher now. It's Fireball 12 for 35 points. Hexcaster now gets Spell Ward instead of you have to hit them on 6s. Fernox, what is this guy? He got a ranged attack. 12-inch, 3 attacks. I will not read through it in detail. He has an Aura Elite infantry only for 30 points. Abyssal Half-Breed Champion gets Fury. Abyssal Grotesque Champion got reworked into a big, heavy pointed 7-attack monster. Overmaster on Winged Half-Breed, that's the non-casting one. It has a unit strength 2 and Fury. The casting one, Supreme Ironcaster Half-Breed, is totally reworked. It's 250 points. You gain Fury, Radiance of Life. Fireball, the base Fireball is removed, but you can buy it back. You also get to cast 2 spells, but the first spell must be Fireball. And then if you do so, you can cast Heal or Search on a friendly unit within 12-inch without line of sight. It also has a purchasable upgrade to reroll a maximum of 3 dice for each Abyssal Half-Breed or Grotesque unit within 6 inches. And yeah, that's the caster on Dragon changes. We have Dravid Delkin. He gained Vicious on his Fireball. And Braki Baka, which is the character Half-Breed Champion, gets Fury. Formation has also changed. It is now 2 slave Orc Gore Rider regiments and a hero. And they all have Thunderous. The regiments have Thunderous too. The hero is a new profile, 7 attacks on a Cav base, 14, 16, 190 points. Aura Wild Charge 2 slave only. Brutal Crushing Strength 2, Riling 2 slave only, Thunderous 1, and very inspiring. So that's a whole heap of changes. Jeff, you said you have been playing with Abyssal Dwarves. Tell us what you have gleaned from your games.
Okay. I've enjoyed it a lot and changed around a lot. I haven't done too much with the infantry, but I've been using the Abyssal Half-Breeds. That's just a straight up upgrade. Going up an extra nerve and 5 points less is fantastic. I thought they were already good, but they're even better now. The Abyssal Grotesque, another big change. Getting Fury, because whenever we did take them, we'd always want mitigation on them. So you've got that at least in combat. And the Strider, another big one. Fire team, I haven't used them yet, but the same as the Decimators, 14-inch range. That's big anyway, you look at it. Plus all the fireballs that you get in the list are virtually vicious as well. So that goes for the Dragonfire teams, the casters, etc. So they were the big ones. And also the big flyer, the ancient
one that cuts spells?
Yes. I tried out 2 of them. I've got the models at home, so I was really looking forward to seeing how they went. I think 1's good, 2's not really that great. getting the one with the affinity, it's not re-roll 3 dice. You actually get 3 more dice.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, so you'll get a fireball 15, and I was using elite on it. So it'd be fireball 50, elite and vicious, and then being able to cast a heal 7 spell anywhere within 12 inches. So that was a really good combination. The big trick is trying to keep all the little individuals away that are going to come in and try and stop your casting, because he's not a brilliant fighter, but he's still something. You can't just leave a flank open to him, because he's vicious, crush 3, 8 attacks on 4s, and with the elite, I'd get an average of 9 wounds on just about anything if I hit him in the flank. So, yeah, it's a little bit like what Adam was saying. There's so many good things in the changes, you just can't pick them all. So, but yeah, they've got a real leg up this time.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it exciting to play and build a Abyssal Dwarf list right now, right?
Yes, yeah, and it was the army I'd been working on, so I've got all the models to run it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was my experience with it. I won some, I lost some, so it's not too much overboard. I am a little bit worried about the amount of phalanx that'll be out there. That'd be the only drawback to it. The more you're using the cavalry, the more that's could hit a real rock if you're the scissors. So
yeah. Let's tangent over. Are we going to see a lot more phalanx? What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think so. It's cheaper, and in a lot of situations, when I look at like a regiment profile and then compared to its same profile in a spear phalanx option, you're getting 3 more attacks. Sometimes you're getting a buff to unit strength, and you're gaining the phalanx rule for only 10 points. It's worth it every time. Like, the attacks alone might be worth 10 points. And if you never use, phalanx at all in a game, 10 points, like, it's still worth it, I think. And then as soon as you actually use phalanx, absolutely was worth it. And then if you gain a unit strength off that 10 points, it's always worth it. I think you should always do that. So
yeah, goblins don't get the 10 the unit strength buff. So we'll get there. We'll talk about it when we get there.
Ratkin do. Ratkin sure do.
Dang it.
I think we're going to see more phalanx, but I think a lot of it's going to come with like Twilight Kin. I think Twilight Kin are going to bring some phalanx just because they have a really good phalanx unit. We've heard every year that phalanx is coming this year. Every year it gets a buff. Every year it hasn't shown up yet. So I'm a little hesitant to just not build any cavalry on it. But I do think we're going to see it at least, instead of it being one of my 10 games, I have to go to 2 events before I really see phalanx. I think I'll see it once an event at least, which is a good rate.
All right.
I'm just saying, Joey, you see plenty of Order the Green Lady your way. I would expect you guys to have phalanx everywhere by now, but it was already good before this change, I think. So, but I'm a believer in phalanx, so I'm just hoping everybody hops on my bandwagon that I'm driving by on.
I wasn't paying 25 points for spear warriors. Wasn't going to do it.
That's cause your skeleton spear the best spearman unit.
Hey, I play Kingdoms of Men with spear phalanx. I've thrown in some spears in a herd list. Like, I play spears whenever I could find them.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
EOD list, you always had the spear units. They were great value before.
All right. Anyone has anything to add on to Abyssal Dwarves? If not, we'll move on to the next one.
I suppose also the
formation
Abyssal
is incredible.
Formation.
That is a phenomenal hero that you're getting for it. A 14-16 rally 2 combat hero. It's Magnilled, right? Like, it's very similar to a Magnilled style hero or Basusu with a ton of support options. Crush 2 Thunder 1 is huge. 7 attacks, brutal. That's an awesome combat hero. And what it does to open up the slave portion of Abyssal Dwarves is something I think people are going to have a lot of fun exploring, even if you just take the formation as its own little package. Right. The Gore Riders go up to 15-17, I believe. They're Crush 1, Thunder 2, Wild Charge 2. So they have an 18-inch threat range. And you just can kind of let that go. And it's 500 points total? You can just sort that in.
I think the Abyssal Dwarf, the Gore Riders are only 12-14 nerve for the regiments. So
Okay,
they'll go.
So which
I'll
for
crush one ton.
They're 135 points. There will be
Yeah.
140 in the formation.
Yeah.
Or ridiculously value.
Yeah, you're getting that extra thunderous charge on them, and you're getting an 18-inch charge range with the aura.
They are hit on 4 unit though. Hit on 4s.
Yeah.
Right, but it
That's-
is interesting that you have unlocked the infantry portion of the list. You have unlocked the slave portion to be interesting, and you have unlocked the fast elements to be interesting, and even the shooting elements as well. So all in all, every aspect of Abyssal Dwarves is getting interesting.
There's lots of good things. The only thing I'm not sure about is that grotesque champion, whether he's just a bit too expensive. He is very good. I'm not sure.
You might see one of them, but I don't think it's going to be a situation early on in Northern Alliance where you saw like 3 lords on Frostfangs, and I think you're right. He's a little bit too high pointage for something like that.
Yeah, because
He's a bit slow in
to the.
You see speed 7?
He's also pretty close to the point where you might consider just taking an empty Supreme Ironcaster for 30 points more and just get to fly and just have the 8 attacks Radiance of Life instead as your support.
True.
I think my favorite change is the Immortal Guard being able to purchase Crushing Strength 1 for 10 or 15 points, troop and regiment. I think you're going to see the evil version of dwarves that took, all the Iron Guard units with throwing mastiffs. You're going to see now, 4 or 5 regiments of Immortal Guards, all with throwing mastiffs and +1 crushing strength, backed up by a heal support or something of the like, because these guys with a -17 regeneration, and now they can, punch pretty decently with their, hitting on 3s with crush 1. I don't know. I think that those guys are going to be, pretty spicy.
Yeah, you've got great access to heal, Radiance of Life, all that. So that would definitely back that up.
Yeah, and this list has weakness as well, right?
Yes.
Yep, Hexcasters for sure.
Do they do the
Same as
they do damage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The big one, I suppose, is you don't need 6s to hit them anymore with Elves. So they just get a spell ward. That is one.
So they did take a nerf.
Yeah,
right.
but it's also a bonus if you want to, say, heal them. You now only need 5s. So it can be taken both ways.
Right. Okay, with that.
Tell me how many times you want to heal your Hexcaster.
Sometimes you do.
Do you? I think if somebody's just shooting at the Hexcaster, something has gone wrong for the enemy.
Don't let him get hit. That's my answer. Just don't heal him. Don't let him get hit.
Right. Okay, let's move on to Ratkin Slaves. It has no changes in itself, but it has inherited all the Abyssal Dwarf changes, and that includes the Berserkers, Black Souls, Decimators, Immortal Guard, Half-Breeds, the Katsuki-chan Rocket Launcher, the Overmaster on the Fighting Dragon, the Ironcaster as well, and the Abyssal Half-Breed Champion. So I think Joey has stuff to talk about this. So Joey, please.
Sure. I got to put hot takes in this podcast to get views. So my hot take is I think Ratkin Slaves are a better list than Ratkin at the moment. I think with the Abyssal Dwarf changes, you can actually run 50% of the army, whereas before the army was built out of Nightmares and Tunnel Runners, and that was kind of all you had. You had to build it out of that because it was all that worked. If you wanted to take the dwarves in your Ratkin slave list, they were speed 4. The rest of your army was speed 6. If you wanted to take the heroes, they couldn't keep up with the slaves, so you had to take taskmasters on chariots. Now you can run the Immortal Guard like Adam was saying. You can fully kit them out the same way Abyssal Dwarves can. And you can run a 4-regiment line supported by Tunnel Runners. And the Tunnel Runners, since you're now not required to run Nightmares, means that you can get away with 1 taskmaster, and they're living legends. So you don't have to invest every hero slot into getting rally because the theme list was built terribly and only has 2 sources of rally in it, despite being Ratkin. So what it opens up in Ratkin Slaves is you can build this really good balance list where you have an infantry corps that's got order march, so it can go speed 8 on the first 2 turns, so it can get up there. It can actually keep up. You have amazing cavalry with the Tunnel Runners, or you could even go no Tunnel Runners and run the Half-Breeds and just take the Impalers, the Death Engine Impalers that are the monsters from Ratkin. as well as Kryza's Impaler with Golek. And you're kind of running an alternative version of the formation in Abyssal Dwarves with a more limited roster. I think this army is cohesive. It has a very clear game plan. It's going to rock a lot of really good shooting between the rocket launcher with its new buff. I put the rocket launcher as like a top 3 war machine in the game.
Basically,
Four
it
attacks.
became the shredder.
It's the old shredder.
It's a new
But now
shredder.
so half the scenarios it'll do something too.
Wow.
So it's got really good shooting support. It's got the throwing dogs that you can actually run now, because you can turn one, move your tunnel runners 8 inches up, and the dwarves can actually go with it and pivot and like point at something. So you don't have to feel locked into your castle. I think Ratkin Slaves have a lot more versatility. I do still think it's held back by being a theme list, because it just doesn't have nearly the amount of options Abyssal Dwarves or Rat can have. So you are going to see it kind of be probably a 2-build pony. I think the old Nightmares and Tunnel Runners build will still work, but I think it's now has the cohesive force where you can run Immortal Guard, you can run a Black Soul spam, you can even run Decimators in this list now.
Yeah,
So I'm very high on it.
I do see that there are less entries, unit choices compared to Kin or Abyssal Dwarves. Adam, you ran Ratkin Slaves as a tournament. What do you have to talk about them?
I mean, I think they're interesting. I didn't run them long enough to be able to really give a confident answer of how they're going to do, but you know, the Abyssal Dwarf buffs are pretty darn good, and I agree. I think Ordered March is the biggest thing with those dwarves being able to potentially keep up with the rest of the line. The one thing I'm really sad that we didn't see, though, is a change to the formation. I think the formation is really, really unique, and the ability to destroy your own units is awesome, because like we talked about, sometimes wavering is really shitty. So why not kill that slave unit that got wavered? But it's so limiting in the formation on how you can actually do that. You have to be in line of sight, you have to be within range, but you have to have that all before you even move that character. I would have loved to see that just get made much more simple, and I think the Rats would have really benefited quite a bit from something like that. I think the Gore Impaler, Kryza's Gore Impaler, is still excellent. I think Golek Skin Flayer is awesome. And, you know, that those two and the formation are really the only unique things about this army. You can play everything else in a different army if you truly wanted to. Rat Slaves really only have these 3 things, and the combination of some of the dwarf and rat type things that if you find something that really works for you, great. But I don't think these changes really boost Ratkin Slaves up to a whole new tier for me.
Well, we got to remember Ratkin Slaves are, if we're going by like A to F, they were on like
Z?
F1000. Yeah. So even if they get to D, that's huge upgrade from where they were.
Sure.
All
I'm
right.
just questioning what army is below them at this point in life still.
Right.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
Well, Jovi, I'm happy to have you report back on your exploits.
I'm taking them to a 1 day in a week. So we'll see if my theory holds out.
All right. With that, let's move on to Basilea. Basilea's their Aegis Fragment has been changed, that it gives Iron Resolve +1. And I think I recently saw on Fanatics it's not a choice, so you have to burn the fragment. So if you only took 1 damage, you still burn the fragment and have Iron Resolve 2 for nothing. I'll read that in detail as we go through the rest. But Man-at-Arm crossbows, they remove pot shots. The Spearmen, being spears, they got a little bit better. All the Men-at-Arms and Sisters all gain the ability to take the Aegis Fragment. Usually before that, it was only exclusive to the Paladins. The Sisterhood Infantry has Rampage up to 10 on the Horde option, which is interesting. The Sisterhood Scout, they drop to Unit Strength 2 as with all Nightstalkers. They gain Universal Vicious. Pentalancers, they are bumped to Defense 4. Chariots, they are Speed 9 and Brutal. The Phoenix got a slight nerf in that the baby Phoenix lost 1 nerf to 15-17, but because it's a Titan, it also got Unit Strength 2, so a nerf and a buff. All the Standard Bearer has funky rules now. So the Bearer of the Holy Icon, it basically, firstly, all of them get very inspiring, and secondly, for this one, it passes out Aegis Fragments every turn. The Priest If you took the heal option, I think it costs a little bit more now. The base profile is 50 points. Heal is 25. It's 80. Before that, it was 75 with the heal option. I think because the priest has a load of rules on it, being a slightly combat character, Iron Resolve, stuff like that, and a Abandon of Point. So, Jeff, you have played Basilea before, so what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's been probably a couple of years since I played them, so I'm no expert on it. Just from looking at that, I suppose the biggest things are the spearmen, just getting that cheaper option, because I used to run the 3 hordes. I used to run the swordsman, but I would definitely go the spearmen now. Just better value, because they have the same defense as the swordsman anyway. So, yeah. The lancers going up to Def 4 would be a bit of a jump, I'd believe, for those who like that speed. The Phoenix, dropping that 1 nerve could be quite a big thing, because you get so close to wavering that with shooting that often that the unit strength 2 is better, obviously, for all of them. But I think the -1 nerve is going to hurt them. They were too good. I still think they are good.
Yep.
The Bearer of the Holy Icon, I don't see that as much of an ability, being able to target a unit and give it a fragment. There's a lot better ones that I've seen with the standard bearers.
And especially in Basilea, where you have no shortage of inspiring. So you
Exactly. Yeah, you've probably played it more than I have, Paige.
I've not played it in a long time, but yeah, basically because of the Elo High. If you're taking a few units of Elo High, you just naturally have enough inspiring all across the boards. So you won't have need for Bearer of the Holy Icon.
I don't see that big a change in the list.
I'm not sure if that Sisterhood Infantry with Rampage 10 would make it interesting though.
Yeah,
it sounds
they
like
usually die to shooting, don't they?
That is true. So they go up to 40 attacks, hitting on 4s, crushing 1 vicious, but they do still have the problem of dying to shooting. You're right. I think overall interesting, but just let the human options be a little bit more viable. But the things that people are bringing are still very good. The only actual nerf is that 1 nerf for the Phoenix, and you could still upgrade it to the Ancient Phoenix for 16-18, but it still comes with that drop of Nimble and drop in defense. So you might take 2 baby and 1 Ancient Phoenix if you even do, because of the Cloak of Death that it provides. All right, with that.
Actually, I wanted to just say one thing, hot take here. So even though I don't play Basilea, I think that these guys might actually overtake Order of the Green Lady for top Alpha Strike army now. Those Panther Lancer chariots going to speed 9, the Panther Lancers being speed 10 and defense 4, and obviously these guys have a low he. You got a lot of speed, and it hits hard, and it's pretty mobile when you add in the Lancers with Nimble. So, and their formation is excellent. I feel like it's been undervalued all of this last edition. Getting Pathfinder on a speed 10 unit, and then being able to also get they also get Fury is quite strong. So them being bumped up to defense 4, I think, is what they needed to really shine. So I'll be interested to see if that takes off at all.
Interesting, yeah. That the Panther Lancers in the formation has Aura Fury Beast only, which makes it look like it's meant for the Gur Panther troops, but it's actually meant for the Panthers that they're riding on.
Yep, and
themselves.
It would affect Naeus. Naeus is the only other unit with Beast keyword in the army. So, and he happens to fit into that fast, hard-hitting type army as well. So,
yeah, he does have a hit strong already, but having Fury on top of that is
Did Nice get speed 9 in this update, or was he speed 9 already?
He was always speed 9.
He's already 9.
Always. Yeah.
It's probably because he's played with a low high that I just assume everything can charge.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they still have Julius, which is still a tank. So there's a lot of tools in that type of Alpha Strike army. So
but most of that was there before anyway.
It was cheaper options like the Chariots and the Panther Lancers were just not taken. And I think you're going to see them now, which gives more drops to that type of list. And I think more drops in an Alpha Strike list is actually scarier than less drops with higher quality.
Yeah, the defense 4 is definitely going to help the Lancers. They do a stiff breeze before.
Yeah,
Yep.
so before that, the Basilean speed lists are mainly elo high, right? Whether in regiments and hordes,
Right.
and those are all very expensive. But now you have access to the cheaper ones in the sister
Mhm.
lancers and the chariots. Although it's defense 4, but with enough options, you can still overwhelm the enemy with your threat of speed. And now with more units if you mix them up. Good take, Adam. Good take. So next, out of the Brothermark, they just inherited the changes to Basilea, mainly the human and non-sister options, the human non-sister options. And their bearer of the holy icon is a little bit different. It gives life leech 1 to infantry only.
Well, I'd prefer that over the other one, because that's going to happen every turn you're fighting rather than the one-off.
But I think the Brothermark hasn't been very popular lately.
No, it's not a great list. That's down there with Ratkin Slaves, I think. Close to it.
Yeah.
I still enjoyed playing it.
They are very flat lists in that they are mainly just all humans. There are just a lot of different flavors of humans, and of course, Phoenix and Ogres, but that's about it. So it's very. I don't think it has a lot of dimensions. I may be a little bit giving a generalization there, but generally it feels that way. So in the interest of time,
I wish
Joey.
Brothermark was a sisterhood army. And the other humans, it's like there's two real themes to Basilea, and Brothermark's neither of them, but it somehow is a theme list of it.
Brother of the Sister Mark. Order the Sister Mark.
That would be way better.
That is, you might have given Mantic some ideas right there. All right, with that. Next is the Dwarves. They also got a lot of love. Iron Watch, they just merged the crossbow and rifle profiles. You just purchase the options, or the infantry all got order march. Bull Walkers, did they go up or down in points? Down, I guess,
Down.
because
Down.
Shield Breakers increase in points, but they get crushing strength 2. Rangers dropping to unit strength 2. Point cost, I think it went down with ordered march. Brock Riders, they have an ability that they countercharge with crushing strength 1. The Iron Belcher, cannon and organ gun get secured position. Charon Bombard secured position, and I am not sure if there's an effective change to the shooting profile. Greater Earth Elemental is a Titan, so unit strength 2. The Dwarf Army Standard Bearer gives an ability to reroll failed headstrong rolls within 6 inches. The Warsmith, instead of a pistol, it gets a rifle now, so it shoots further for attacks. The Dwarf Lord has an upgrade to get secured position, but he can't take items if he does so. The Stone Priest, I guess the spell got stripped off. And now the ability to cast Bane Chant after surging Earthbound unit does not require line of sight, and in case you surge it out of your front arc, I guess. But the Stone Priest is an individual you can always turn before it casts spells. Oh well. The Rhodian, now I'm angry. You can choose to pop a once per game ability to give Aura Rampage D3 to infantry only until start of the following turn. The formation. Any changes to the formation? Yes, the standard bearer that comes with firstly, because it contains Bullwalkers, it got cheaper, right? And then the standard bearer now has no restriction of not being able to take an item. So it could take a loot of Insatiable Darkness if it wishes to.
Change.
Yeah, on top of the banner just getting an extra ability and very inspiring itself just makes the formation much better in it. So let's throw it to Jeff to talk about this.
Give Joey a go at this. I'll lose my voice.
Okay. I'll give the short version. I think your good dwarf lists are going to stay about the same. The Dwarf Lord might see some play with secure position. They might play around with that, depending on how the Dwarf players feel with push. If they really want yet another thing to carry loot tokens, they can work around with that. The main thing with the Stone Priest, with the Stone Shaper, is now you can surge it out of 12 inches and still cast Bane Chant on the thing you surged. That's what the regardless of range. So it just makes it a little bit more easy to play around with, and you spend 10 points on it. So if you only took Surge, you aren't paying for an ability you can't use. But realistically, I don't think Ordered March is going to change the way you design your dwarf list as much as where the dwarf lists are at are just going to use Ordered March. Because a lot of the dwarves are already taking the formation, or they're taking 4 Iron Guard, and they're just going to be able to play a little bit faster. I don't think, at least immediately, you're going to see lists lean on Ordered March until they get a feel for how it plays on that turn 1 and 2. Because it's really hard to get an idea for where Ordered March is going to take you, how you're going to play with it when you go top of 1 versus how you're going to play with it when you go bottom one, because dwarves in the past have had to deploy perfectly. You have to deploy with dwarves as if you're going to play 3 turns in advance. You have to pick your spot. And with Ordered March, you still pick your spot and you want to deploy, but you have a lot more wiggle room.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going into turn 4 thinking, if I don't get this kill, I am not going to be able to move on to the scenario unless there's a turn 7. Right. In dwarves, you're always thinking 3 turns in advance. Ordered March, you're probably thinking 2 turns in advance. So I think it's going to be probably 4 or 5 months before we see real changes to the way dwarves are played. And then we're going to start to see things open up with probably bulwarkers. And the formation, I think, is going to be a lot more popular.
Yeah. One of the reasons I didn't take the formation, I did try it a couple of times, but was the fact that I couldn't give an item to the standard bearer. That was my one bugbear with it. That's changed, so I would definitely take that now. Rhordia, that's a bit of a debuff as far as I'm concerned, because his biggest thing, it used to be you could make them re-roll all their successful wounds. And because he's defense 6, you could virtually stop anything. He's going to lose that ability now. I don't think the D3 Rampage is going to be
significant.
It's not going to make up for that loss. The crushing 2 on the shield breakers, that'll be interesting if you can protect them. And the Brock Riders getting countercharge crush 1, that's a really big thing. That makes them a lot more viable. It used to have to run around with a Bane chant all the time just to try and keep them going. But now with 26 attacks and vicious, they're quite viable even after the charge. So I think they'll come back into play a little bit more now.
They still have to survive. That's the one thing that.
Yeah, but they're still good high nerve. They usually do survive a counter charge, depending on
it's
up against.
It's really funny because the Brock Riders are actually going to be better against a lot of things on a counter charge. So you almost just purposely charge them into a phalanx unit like a regiment, knowing they're not going to kill you on the counter charge. So that way you can then counter charge them the turn after to get crushing strength. So
yeah.
Or you move them up.
It's a funny interaction.
Range. You're like, yeah, please charge something defense 5 chaffy, like wraiths.
Yeah.
They still get -1 to hit, even on the counter charge.
Well,
they do, but
other units.
But you get crushing 1.
This is good.
Yeah. Still an improvement for them, whichever way you look at it. I think I'd look at taking them again. With what you were talking before, like the Myth, he's got 4 attacks with the rifle. If he takes that special item, so he doesn't get 7 attacks with the gun, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is.
No, he does, right?
That's just the way Paige wrote it. So yeah, Rampage and Slayer would work on this.
It will work if the attack is over here.
Okay, all right.
It will not work if the 4 attacks is over here. If it will not attack if it's in the weapon.
Separate, right? So if their melee is different to their shooting ability, then it doesn't work. Okay,
great for audio.
Yep.
All right. So next up, let's move on to 3 dwarfs. No one has put their name to talk about this, but let me just flip over to talk about their changes. 3 dwarfs. There we go. Iron Watch has been combined. They do get the Stone Claw Riders, and their standard bearer gets Rally 1 dwarf only instead of rerolling failed headstrong rolls, and they have the Stone Claw Champion as well. 3 dwarf rangers. What did they get?
Those are the same.
Same, right? Levy, are they even usable now? They have unit strength 3 on the regiment, right? Shield breakers the same. Crushing 2. Their Brocks gain the option they gain Pathfinder by default instead of needing to buy it. So instead of the crushing strength 1 on the counter charge, they are Pathfinder by default. Is the main thing that they got. All right, and that's the changes of the 3 dwarfs. I think the thing that's getting the most buzz is that Rally 1 option on the standard bearer, so they can possibly get Rally 2 on all their dwarf units, is the buzz I've been hearing about. The other thing would be the Stone Claw Riders can run with the Brock Riders to be a fast flank package, and the Brocks can stand in front of the Stone Claw Riders as well, because the Stone Claws are height 4, they can see over the Brocks and charge at stuff. I'm not an expert in this faction at all. Anyone has anything to talk about for this faction?
I haven't heard great reviews about the Stone Claws for their price. A lot of it looks good, but I think the Defense 4 at that price they're going to be targeted pretty quickly.
Very costly, yeah. And
Yeah.
the difference with the free dwarf version in the ranged attack is this one is only inches, and
Yep.
it's also missing steady aim, which I think is a bit of a mistake. A 12 ranged attack should usually come with steady aim because it's just too short to be without it. So I don't think the shooting attack will ever be taken when it does not have steady aim. Yep.
Yeah, the Stoneclaw, like if it's firing flat, it should average 8 hits, pierce 1, which is pretty good. But you're never going to see that. You're going to be
You have to
half the
move
time
up to shoot. Right?
cover. You're probably moving because you don't want to get charged. So you want to move into a spot where you're not going to be chargeable, or you're moving in front of your wall of something that still blocks them from being charged. So you're really gonna be ranged 5 up unless it's like turn 6 and they're in a wonky scenario spot where you're staying still. So you're probably looking at more like 5 hits, pierce 1, which for 260 points, I'd want a little bit better than that.
He has blast. Oh no, yeah, but
yeah.
the attacks are less, right? So
yeah. So it's 8 hits if it's shooting flat on 4 up, because you should expect 2 hits per blasty 3.
Right.
I think the biggest thing for the free dwarves is that rally 1 for dwarf only from the army standard bearer. That is pretty spicy because you can take more than 1 army standard bearer. So rally and dwarves, you can get some of those elite infantry up to 16, 18s, maybe even a 17, 19 for some of them. And that affects all of your heroes too. So everybody loves a good old Garrick heavy hand. And now if he's rallied too, oh man, everybody's going to love him even more.
It's going to be a nightmare.
All right. So with that, let's move on to the next.
And there's going to be less Alchemist Curse out there to affect all their Def 6 units as well. Something that's probably going to affect them.
Next, we have Elves, which are gone or got, I think they got cheaper. Several of these elf units got the keyword, and it's very intuitive which units get the Warhost keywords. Basically, the ones that weren't taken before gets the Warhost keyword. There's no other fluff reason why they got this keyword other than they were less popular units. So the Kindred Archers, they got their old profile back. They are back to shooting 5 and they are cheaper. And Glade Stalkers, their regiment unit strength dropped to 2. Tall Spears got cheaper. Warhost on the Archers get Warhost as well. The Glade Stalkers don't get Warhost because they're a popular unit. The Sea Guard don't get Warhost because they were a popular unit. Kindred Warriors got Warhost. Palace Guard, do they get Warhost? They get Warhost, right. Remove Crushing Strength 1. So they get changed to being Defense 5, but they can drop the Defense 5 to 4 to get the Crushing 1 back, which is their old profile. Battle Cats, what did they get? Did they hit worse now? Melee to 5+, defense to 3.
No,
Pathfinder.
They're actually a chaff unit, like they should be.
Were they hitting on 4s?
Yeah, they were hitting on 4s before.
And the defense
were
2.
paying for it.
The defense were 2, but now it's 3, right? And they get Pathfinder, remove elite melee swarms only, and vicious melee special rules, right?
Big jump.
Chariots got cheaper. Bows got removed. You can purchase them back. They got brutal and keyword Warhost. Dragon's Breath, I think they got cheaper. Standard Barrier, they got Aura, Rampage, Melee, 3, Warhost only. And interestingly, it's just flat out 3 where a lot of things have to roll D3. Elven King, let's see. He has a Universal Elite and it can get a bow. And he's a Warhost. Noble War Chariot, he has a Warhost. It's cheaper. It's got Inspiring.
Yeah, that's a big one for that.
Attacks, I think, got bumped to 5. Nerf got bumped up by 1 probably. Points adjusted. Dragon Kindred Lord, unit strength 2. King's Champion, Inspiring instead of Very Inspiring. Okay, Madrigal, it's got a 1-shot trick shot. Defense is 3+, attacks 4, 120. Okay. Argus Rodina, it is now a unit strength 1 and it's no longer an individual. I think it got a slight point increase for that. And the other dragon character gets unit strength 2. Adam, what are your thoughts?
All good changes, I believe. The changes aren't going to adjust the current kind of elf standardized lists that you see right now, because I think that list is pretty finely tuned, kind of one of the top tier lists, I think, when it's wielded by an excellent general. So I think not nerfing any of those pieces except for the Alchemist Curse that we already discussed is good for the elf players, and then just bringing a lot of these other units up to maybe not up to par, because it's tough to be as good as Dracons are and as good as some of the elf shooting units are, but they're in contention to be played. I think the biggest changes are the Palace Guard being able to be defense 5 is pretty huge. The shield wall were never played, mainly because they hit on 4s and you could never take them in anything higher than a regiment. So Palace Guard now basically fill that role, and you can take them in any size. And then the Noble on War Chariot is an amazing piece now. He got increased a little bit in points, but the nerve that you get, the +1 attack, and the inspiring, well worth it. And I think you're going to see Nobles on War Chariots in the current elf build that you would see, with the Dracons and Gladestalkers or Silver Breeze with that. And my personal favorite adjustment, I think, is Battle Cats. I've been a fan of these guys before, and I think the adjustments they made to them just make them even better now. Chaff is a good thing to have even when you're elves, and these guys are actually a true chaff unit now. So
yeah, the Noble on War Chariot is really cheap for what it does. It's cheaper than my Goblin King on Chariot, and it's better. It does have a shooting attack, so
it does, but your Goblin King has 7
attacks,
so
right?
That's pretty criminal. It's only 130 points with its 7 attacks. So,
and +1 nerf 13. Is it 13?
Yeah.
12?
Almost like
I think it's a
15.
13, 15.
Yeah.
Me and Kate Randall have been looking over these changes, kind of trying to figure out a way to break the BSB Rampage aura. And ultimately what we've come down to is that it's probably not worth building into, because you have to give up so much stuff. But like Adam said, the Noble War Chariot is probably the highlight for me. It's very easy to take 1 or 2. Taking 3 of it's super hard in Elves just because hero slots are so competitive in this list. But it's not hard to see people running 1 or 2 of them from here on out with where that profile's at. I mean, it's like a Dread Fiend for 30 points less that shoots. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, so I think the Rampage melee tree, even if you make full use of it, Rampage only affects the infantry and cavalry, right? So it depends on what you're up against. So even if you build a well-tuned list, it might not be as good into certain lists. And my only gripe is that the only defining factor of Warhost is like the units that you seldom see taken get this keyword. So it's a bit strange to me. So there's no law reason, I guess. So it's more like, yeah, we just want to buff certain units, so we give them this keyword.
Yeah, if you're not in a meta where ogres are common, like you can build around that BSB, but as soon as ogres become commonplace, that list gets very roughed up very fast.
Right.
And I agree. I think the adding of a new keyword and just kind of obviously putting it on the less utilized units it's not ideal in a perfect world, but I'd much rather that versus them just giving the flat out melee 3 rampage for all infantry. And then you're just going to see more Gladestalkers. And I think we already don't see enough of the bows and phalanx guys. I'm just drawing a blank right now.
Yeah, but I think you can find other ways to buff them rather than through a specific keyword. You can just tune those profiles to be better.
Fair. But I think it would just have been different from the buffs that they were already doing for everybody else at this point.
All right, let's move on to Sylvan Kin. They have access to Neretica, Gladestalkers unit strength 2, Stormwind Cavalry. They have access to Quicksilver Lancers, and they are able to purchase Pathfinder upgrades. Greater Air Elemental, as with all of them, got nerfed to 8 attacks. Forest Guard, I think, is in line with the Elves changes. Forest Warden, which is the large infantry shambling tree, not shambling, but the tree folk character, gets inspiring.
Yeah, that's a good bonus. That we used to run quite a few of them, so getting inspiring is a really good bonus for that unit.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a cheap hero with us. So now you can...
exactly.
And didn't mention it in the Elves, but Madriga's changes are actually quite strong. So she goes up from 3 attacks to 4 attacks, which is really good when you're piercing 2 and hit on 3s with your ranged attack. And then the trick shot ability that she has is now, it got changed just like Karis's Solar Staff, where you can use it every turn if you want. So her trick shot is you just sacrifice all your shooting attacks for one of them, and then it's a blast D6. But they did lower the range on it. I think it's only a 24-inch range for the trick shot. It used to be 48-inch. So
why would I be using this instead of the normal 4 shots?
You won't, because now they have 4. When there was 3 shots, I think it was definitely a toss-up, especially because you have Argus Rodnar, who allows you a free reroll on a single attack. And now that Argus got buffed to be unit strength 1, as he should have been the entire time, it's a combination. Yeah. Whether it's good. I don't think it's like top tables, you're going to see it everywhere good, but it's something to look out for.
Argus can't reroll the blast die, right?
No, I believe it's specifically a 2-hit or a 2-wound roll.
Okay. Yeah, I wish Madriga's blast was D3 plus 2. Instead, it was just a flat 3 to 5 in that range, because nothing feels worse than going trick shot and hitting and then getting blast 1.
I think if you were to give it 2 different shots, right, you should at least make the shots a different profile rather than just the number of hits. Make it piercing 4 attack, but blast D3. Then there's options of when you want to use it, or make it super long range. So when your normal bow can't shoot and hit, then you can go for that, right? So, oh well, just a minor gripe. With that, we'll move on. Anything else have anything to add to Sylvan Kin?
They did clarify. Oh, perfect. Yeah. Joey's talking about it. Go.
Same thing. You can't be Nimble and Pathfinder on the Stormwind Cap for free. Well, you would pay the points, but you can't put both upgrades on anymore, which I think was a change from the old RC. They had said you could, now you can't, and it's written down. So much better play. I think if we're going to discuss Sylvan Kin as a whole, I think the army got a really big nerf. They were propped up a lot with Greater Air Elementals. That did a lot of work for that list. So losing 2 attacks in the Greater Airs hurts them a lot. The Force Warden Inspiring opens up their unlocks a fair bit, so they can actually run trees, and they don't have to run tree herders as their only hero slots in order to get Inspiring and Surge. So that opens up, I think, the list's viability just from an option perspective. But without the Air Elementals, I struggle to see them being a top-end competitive list for a while.
Only 1, possibly 2 unlocks in the army, and Gladestalkers are the clear choice of unlocks. And they got nerfed down to unit strength 2 in a regiment. So I just don't think Sylvan Kin are in a good place because of their lack of good unlocking troops.
Well said. All right. With that, let's move on to Empire of Dust. So their army rule of casket has changed to give the units scout, and it's mostly the foot slogging skeletons that get the option to caskets, right? And am I missing a page of changes here? Let me see. No, it's over there. All right. So Cursed High Priest on Royal Chariot. What changed here, Adam?
It's a new unit entirely. So,
there we go.
Yeah, Cursed High Priest used to only be on foot. Now you can take a chariot option for a scoring Cursed High Priest.
Right. And now you have a new hero as well, Catan of the Dead Seas. I believe this guy came from the Armada game.
Yeah, he was, I believe, in a version of the game in 2nd edition, and then he got dropped in 3rd edition, but he was in Armada, so now he's being brought back.
I think he was the old 2nd edition.
What is he? That could have been it.
So he could cast 2 spells, and he has Surge 3, Wind Blast 4, Wind and Perish 2. Surge 3, that's very little. All right, there's a Sandborn Worm Rider champion as well. So Skeleton Warriors have or they already have the option. Is it free now to drop to defense 3 and crushing 1? They have the casket
it used to
option.
cost points.
Spearman got cheaper by a little bit. They have the option for the casket. Skeleton Archers, they have a ranged attack curse boast. Again, it gets shattering. Deadeye Crossbows lost pot shot. Revenants, they now have the defense 5 option, and they can drop to defense 4 for crushing 1. They can have Scout, and Slave Guardians gets casket as well. Oh, okay. Guardian Archers, they get casket as well.
They lost.
They
casket.
removed casket.
Oh, they
casket.
remove,
Just-
right.
they can
And
lose
Archers removed casket as well. They also do not have pot shots. Skeleton, Archer, Cavalry, amend points. I think they got cheaper. Bone Giant, they got upgraded to a Titan with the usual Giant style stats. Of course, being Bone Giant, it is fearless. Monolith gets unit strength 2. Great. The Standard Bearer is defense 5, 60 points. Aura Strider infantry only. Very inspiring. And Pharaoh on Chariot. The Ra ability, instead of only affecting units in combat with it, it now picks a unit within 6 inch. Did I get that right? Okay. And the Revenant King on Undead Great Flying Worm, unit strength 2 points change. I think it's a reduction. Apathis, unit strength 2, a point reduction. Elites, Universal Elite Special Rule. Remove Winds of Death. I don't know what that used to do. Adam, please tell me what
It gave him a lead on spells only.
So he has Universal Elite now, and it's got cheaper. So Adam, you've talked about this on Countercharge Army Review. Just tell us some highlights of the army changes.
Yeah, and it's not out at least at the time of the recording, but I did do a tier list review for Dash 28. So keep an eye out for that article if you want to know my opinions on Empire Dust units. I think the biggest changes here in the army are the Revenants getting their defense 5 option back. I think is number one.
Mm-hmm.
And tied for that number one is the Bone Giant becoming a Bone Daddy. So those two things, I think you will absolutely see more of those units being played. The rest of these changes are nice. Some of the units that are added in are okay. I think Arcatan is, he's unique. He, like, in an army where the living legends are really what you build around, he could see play, but I don't think he'll see play competitively just because he's not anywhere close to as strong as the other living legend options.
Yeah.
So I think that the scout upgrade, the caskets being changed just in general is great because they were the one, well, maybe not the one, but they are the worst, or were the worst universal upgrade for an army, giving more surge dice. Scout, we'll see how it goes here. I think the biggest thing is the possibility of mummies and potentially even revenants in a build where you get the army standard bearer or a strider for infantry, and then you have scouting infantry as well. The issue with that army, though, is that the army standard bearer doesn't scout, and you have to pay, 35 points for the individual scouting items. So I just don't really see it coming into play, but you have the possibility to have scouting mummies that have strider and have an elite aura from the Pharaoh on foot. So you could just buff mummies up all to hell and play, 15 regiments of mummies, I guess, if you really want to give that a try.
Hey, the standard bearer doesn't have shambling, so it could run, or it could be mounted on a horse, but that's also 25 points.
Yeah, you go
Very
bottom
true.
one, you have to double the standard bearer and then charge your mummies because your opponent walked in the charge range.
Yep.
For the usual list, I believe they can deploy the guardians on the front line now, and the skeleton screen can be deployed on the second line and scout past the guardian, which just effectively makes your line move up an extra 3 inches, I guess, because the guardian won't be starting behind the skeletons. So just that slight speed.
You buy half a turn of movement on however many units you're adding scout to for 5 to 10 points each. So like I said, it's better than nothing. I'm personally not going to be playing with it, but I think that there are going to be some utilities to it. I would have liked to seen the skeleton archers and the skeleton crossbowmen at the very least also get the casket option, because scouting a shooting unit, it's not uncommon. Many other armies already do that. So I think that could have been useful for EOD. To be fair, though, we already have our own form of scout, which is just surge them the first turn anyway, and then they can get in range. So It's not even necessary. I just think that there's a couple of fine things that could have been added, but I'm most excited for the Bone Giant change. I've been playing around with him already, and you know what doesn't care about weakness from Twilight Kin casters is a crushing 4 Bone Giant. So
Very true.
Yeah.
I think the Bone Giant change, Ross's change, I think is also makes them much, much more easier to use. So it's a lot easier to actually take them. Before you kind of had to have a very strong game plan of when you were going to bring them. Now you can kind of just include them. You can throw them in the list. I don't know if you're going to take Shobik out for Ross, but maybe you don't run a Pappy and you run Ross instead for a cheaper one and do stuff like that. So I think he's going to be a lot easier to play, a lot easier to include. I don't think you're going to see a triple like Ross, Shobik, Pappy list, but he's up there now in usability because before he kind of only worked with worms that I found. They were the easiest thing to bring him with because you didn't want him being super slow. So either the Undead Dragon or the Chariots worked with him, but now he can just kind of work on anything.
Yeah,
Great
even I got surprised by Skeleton Spearman Hordes suddenly hitting on trees, and with the Strider Infantry from the Bannerman, so they don't get hindered. So the Skeleton Spearman Hordes are suddenly hitting on trees.
And another thing to mention about Ra's ability, one, he went down in points overall for it, and then his ability activates after he completes his move. So if you want to, like a Legion of Chariots or something that goes out there fast, you don't have to be even close to them. You can move Ra, give the buff to the Chariots, and then have the Chariots charge, 16 inches away from him and get into a combat, and they'll still have the melee 3.
Right. That's interesting. Okay, next up, let's talk about Forces of the Abyss. Abyssal Guards got cheaper, Lower Abyssals got cheaper, Succubi got cheaper, Flame Bearers got cheaper because most of them have regen or ensnare, so they got cheaper. Warlock, Blood Boil got cheaper, Abyssal Horseman slightly cheaper. Harbinger, which is their version of the Standard Bearer, has Rampage, melee 3, infantry only, and very inspiring, of course. The Fiend, being a Titan, unit strength 2, Archfiend, unit strength 2, and I think 5 points cheaper to 300. And their formation has changed to what some might say is the best formation in the game, the Fiendish Ambush, 1 Succubi Regiment, adding 15 points, Lower Abyssal Troop plus 5 points, Flame Bearer Troop plus 20 points. Succubi and Lower Abyssals get Thunderous 1, Flame Bearer Troop gets an alternative shooting attack, which is Fireball 12, for a whopping total of plus 40 points to the formation. Jeff, you've been playing with this army?
Yeah, I haven't done the formation. That's probably one of the worst ones I've seen. Yeah, why you would take all that, I don't know. But anyway, they've got good buffs across the board, just in price, pretty much. The thing is still the nerves low on the horsemen and the suck. So when I've been playing them, that's my only problem. I thought the stealth might save the succubi, but they still get shot off easier than a defense 5 unit with no stealth. But they're cheap enough now. That's a big drop, 15 points on a regiment, and I think it's 15 on the horsemen as well. I've been trying the aura out. That's been good. But again, as Adam said, if there's a lot of ogres around, it's not going to come into play that often, but that doesn't worry me too much. The extra unit strength on the Abyssal Fiend's good, just made him even better. Blood Boil I never use with the Warlock. But yeah, no, all good changes. That's one of the lists that I've got virtually all Mantic for. So yeah, I'll be definitely running it in some tournaments this year.
Yeah, I do have Forces of the Abyss as well. It's currently on the shelf because this army is also due for a rework.
Yep.
It is the second army to be reworked next year, the first one being the Trident realm. So if we take cue from when the Northern Alliance were reworked this year, I think it will be in the second half of next year, somewhere in the July, August period, where we will see the new Forces of the Abyss. So minimal changes here, so because we are holding out for the big change.
Just cost reductions.
Yeah.
Best art in the book, though.
Come again?
Best art in the book.
Best art in the book. Yeah.
I mean, and I think it should just be reiterated, worst formation.
Yes, really. Just doesn't make sense.
Nope, not one bit.
Pay 20 points for a shooting attack that only works better in corner case scenarios. Right. Okay.
But does it actually work better?
Yeah.
When you're
You get
shooting,
shattering.
Number one on
That's
the
it.
buy.
You get shattering.
It's
But
40
use
points
piercing.
for Helm of the Ram on your Succubi regiment. That's what you're getting.
it's only better if you're shooting at individuals, if I'm not wrong, because you don't suffer the
Okay.
individual.
No, that's true.
No, I'll take it now.
Forces of Nature. Here we go. Ensnarers got cheaper. Heart Piercers got cheaper. Salamander Primes, I think they got cheaper. They get to take Otters, which is cute. Prey Hunters has a major change. They got range changed to 4+, 740 in attacks, points to T180, and they have the option to take Frenzied Otters. So they become like Scorch Wings, but just the slower version, but they're still defense 3. The one key thing they have going for them over Scorch Wings is that they are an unlocking unit. Scorch Wings got slightly more expensive. Greater Air Elemental, we alluded earlier, dropped in 2 attacks to 8. Greater Earth, being a Titan, is 2 unit strength. Hydra, 2 unit strength. The Druid has its Heal 2 removed, and on top of that, its base points dropped by 10. So even if you take the Heal 2 in return, it is 55 instead of the past 65, which was awesome because the Druid is always taken anyway. Walker Druid, the Heal 4 got removed. The Ring of Harmony upgrade, I think, got slightly more expensive. Forest Warden Inspiring, we got that already. Now, the big one, the Unicorn lost its base spell, but the price has not changed at all. Some people might think that it was a mistake, but it isn't, because when Matt and the RC calculated the point value of the Unicorn, they realized that it should be 120 points without spells. So now if you have to take a Lightning Bolt, it's 35 points more than how much it would have costed before. That's all of the nature changes. Jeff, would you like to talk about these?
As you said, the Unicorn's going to be the big one. It's a very common one to take. You can shoot them with the spells, and then you can shoot across the board and stop virtually anything with it. Defense 5, 12, 14 nerve was brilliant. I would have liked to have seen, say, add 1 extra attack for that cost, but maybe they've calculated it better than me. But yeah, that will definitely hit a lot of the armies out there. Scorch Wings, I think that's a good change. I thought they were priced. Grey Hunters will be good. I like the ones like the Salamander Primes, because I used to run the hordes of them quite often, and with that reduced price and the Frenzied Otter, that really does make them a lot better, because you've got the hero that gives elite to them as well. It can be quite a strong force in the center. Yeah, most of the things are good. I'm not sure. I never used the Glaive Druid, but I know how good it was used against me. So I'm not sure with the changes how that will affect that. They've got the Forest Warden again. It's a common one that I used in nature. So that'll be good. I think it's pretty good all round. I agree with the nerfs and I agree with the buffs.
I have 2 questions for the people over here, which is, will the Brave Hunters see play, and what would be, second question would be, what would be some of the competitive builds for Forces of Nature right now with that nerf to greater air elementals?
Yes, to your first question. And I think that Forces of Nature, you're going to see, I think, just more elemental builds, because the combination of elementals isn't available anywhere else. So you might as well start messing around with those Regiment of Earth elementals combined with Horde of Fire elementals. I still think the formation is very playable, getting brutal on the air elemental hordes. And those air elemental hordes, once you add put some points on magic items with some extra points on them, they become pretty devastating with a speed 10 unit. So I also think there's a severe lack of Hydras in the game, and would love to see many, many more Hydras.
Yeah, they're good fun. Good fun. Yeah. The only question I've got over the all elemental list, I remember I ran one in Clash of Kings a few years back, and I managed to go through the tournament without a loss and managed to get the second lowest attrition in the tournament, just for the sheer fact that I couldn't get across the board quick enough. So I couldn't get the big kills. So So that is something to consider. I know people that have shooting armies that shot me the whole way, but I still won like invade and things like that because they didn't move forward. But yeah, it is something to consider. If you've got to get a lot of surge in there to
what I'm wondering with Forces of Nature is if they're going to switch to Salamanders, if they do want to play an elemental build.
Well, that I would be playing the Salamanders personally.
Mostly because I think the Greater Fire is probably equal to the Greater Air at this point, and then it becomes a question of do you want the Phoenixes to support your fire elementals? So I think Forces of Nature are probably going to land in a similar spot to where Salamanders are going to end up, and then people are going to decide which of the two versions they like of it more.
Yeah, I suppose you do have some speed with the big flyers. I'd still take the Greater Air because I love using it, and I haven't used it as much because I just thought it was a little bit broken. A lot of the tournaments, they're bringing out all the big guns, so you'd take it if you were going to use the army. But yeah, I prefer it now. I prefer it.
With that 8 attacks, you don't have to take a shower every time you use it, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's fair now. I still like it. It's still a good unit. It's just where it should be. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, even before this, my list for nature would be earth and air. So you use your earth as walls for them to crash into, and then you clean up with air elementals. You could bring Tree Herder to bring more sustain with the defense 6 profile himself and Radiance of Life to heal the earth elementals. Fire is just a sprinkling to do cleanup. Yep, I think that build is still there, just got weaker.
As Joey said, the greater fires are good. I really like them. Shooting attacks on 3s, crushing 3, vicious. They were very good.
I think the elemental builds are going to come out more because of the Forest Warden change getting inspiring. As an EOD player, at least the way I play Surge, is the fact that you only want to Surge 1 or 2 inches usually. And so Forest Wardens having a low Surge value isn't as big of a deal, but you can always still take at least one of the Glade Druid for kind of the central line, and you go around there. So I see, the issue before I felt like was you were taking a Gladewalker Druid plus a Druid, and then also potentially relying on a Surge from a Tree Herder, which is just ridiculous to pay that many points for a Tree Herder just to cast Surge, where now you can get away with some value with the Forest Wardens, and you can have that inspiring.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, the way Beaner would usually do it was he would run the Gladewalker with the Ring of Harmony, and then he would add 3 more Surge on it with the Tome. So it's 2 casts of Surge 11, and that kind of covers you for 95% of what you're going to need it for, mostly with the double cast. And then he would run the Druid. But
I always take the extra.
It sounds like he was going for long bombs.
No, it was he would Surge 11 1 Aramel, and then Surge 11 a second greater. And
right, but those are... The Surge 11 seems like overkill, but then again, I've played Traish and I failed a Surge 8 needing like 1 success too. So
we've all had that
Surge heaps of times that game.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised the Gladewalker Druid gets to take an item with Ring of Harmony still, because the Surge 3 is probably excessive, but the plus 6-inch range on the heal and Surge, it just goes so well hand in hand. So you have an 18-inch cast.
You might take the heal of the Saint to stack on the heal too.
He's the best caster in the game. He's the best. There is nobody better, because he also has a lead effectively on his spells when he's nearby an elemental.
Yeah, I was looking that up. Yep, we roll all ones.
And it was Garrett Mercer who was playing the Gladewalker Druid, and he would take Loot of Insatiable Darkness on him. So he would cast 2 Bane Chants onto units because it doesn't prevent you, it doesn't specify what spells you can double cast, it just allows anything. So he had a tech and a build around that, which worked pretty well for him.
Yeah, it's a smart one.
Yeah, as long as you cast a spell targeting an elemental, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I guess it's not enough to Oblivion, but it's still very playable.
I think it's now just a choice. Like if you're going to play with fires, you probably play Salamanders.
Okay, now next herd. The tribal units all have their Tundras as optional upgrades now. The Lycans got cheaper. Oh, and that's it. Oh, Longhorns, they got a significant change. They go up in defense, down in attacks. Is it down in price? I think down in price. They lost Tundras 1, but they may purchase it back. But I think they used to have a lot of attacks. Now they became a normal regiment of attacks, so they are no longer a blender unit themselves, but more of a higher defense rally provider that also helps a bit in combat. I think Countercharge had a herd army review, and they were lamenting the loss of the Longhorn's role in being a blender unit.
I saw Adam playing on UV with them the other day. You're playing Tom, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple games in. I played against Tom Anus, played a couple others so far with the herd, and I'm just testing the waters, but I like some of the changes in the build that I was messing around with. So
it's very back and forth. One of those ones, whoever's turn it was, looked like they were winning, and then the other person just went back and forth. I didn't see the end, but yeah, it looked like a good game.
Nah, Tom pulled it out on me. In the end, I switched up the list from there, but in the end, I needed to take a couple of more heavy hitter things or more sustainable things. So, but I like the herd and the herd changes. I think that the Longhorns going down in points is pretty substantial. They do lose a lot of their potency, but they become a different role effectively. They're much more of the support role that Rally really wants you to be, while also putting out a pretty decent defensive front with a average nerve base and defense 5. So once you stack a few units with Rally around them as well, the regiments become, and even the troops become pretty tough to crack. So you're sitting at 16, 18 defense 5 with a regiment, or you're sitting at 12, 14 with a troop. Pretty good in my opinion.
Do you mix troops and regiments into your list?
Yeah, so the current version I was playing with, I have 3 troops of Longhorns and 1 regiment, and I find that's enough to cover. And I actually use the troops to screen and more as chaff pieces in the front line, and then if they get wavered, I just run through them with the stuff. And then they're in the second line supporting with the rally still and being annoying, even if they're wavered. So I've also found that Hydras are fun. And, unit strength 2 Hydras for 150 points are awesome. The only thing I wish they had was the herd keyword, so you could bump them up to an 1820 in the list. But, next year's changes, we'll just put that on the wish list. And then I think the Centaur Bray Hunter change is the biggest for the herd, because their ability to get unlocks out of a unit that puts out range threat is enormous in the list. So, and I've been playing with their formation. So one sneaky combo is the formation character that gives Aura Vicious to tracker keyword, just flat vicious, not range, not melee. And the Centaur Bray Hunters have the tracker keyword. So if you have that character next to Bray Hunters, they're effectively Silver Breeze with Vicious instead of Elite. And they come with Pathfinder and Thunderous Charge instead of Elite. But the huge thing is the Bray Hunters unlock. So I like them quite a bit.
Are the tracker regiments worth taking for the formation though?
Just because they do automatic wounds, yeah. Everything else is crap about them. They need to either be 24-inch bows or steady aim or hitting on 4s or regular. Yeah, let them unlock. I just don't understand why tribal trappers are just hated on. But I guess they got their attacks improved to 10 and 12, so whatever.
When Keith Conroy listens to this, I want him to understand that we all want trappers to unlock, except 7 people.
Is he one of them?
No.
Oh, okay.
Keith Conroy has been begging for trappers to unlock for 4 years.
I think they should, honestly. But at the same time, I don't know. I found that the heroes in Herd have been somewhat underwhelming. So it's not like I'm hurting for unlocks to get, really good heroes or something like that. You take your Moonfang and then maybe you take your, Horn of the Migration. Otherwise, it's everything else is just whatever.
I still like the Avatar of the Father, mostly because he's on a 50. He's the only dragon
That's
on
true. That's true. He's not bad. I guess you can take Wilt Daddy in the army too, but he is expensive.
Does he benefit from rally?
He does not. He does not have the herd keyword.
He does. I just saw it.
But the father does. Wilt Father does.
Avatar the Father, yes.
Oh, right.
Sorry, I was like Wilt Father -20.
No.
Yes, please.
I think what's interesting that I'm learning in this session is that even the factions that got little changes or love is still very interesting in how those little changes also change up the list quite a bit. So
you have heard right now is I do think they're pushed out a little bit with like War of the Green Lady. Does a lot of what Herd wants to do in and of itself. Herd as an alpha army, I don't think works as well as like War of the Green Lady. If you want to be an alpha army, just play Basileans or War of the Green Lady. If you want to do something funky like offset elves, like weird beastmen elves, like Adam's doing, there's some play here.
I mean, it has some shooting, but it's more of a counterpunch army because I think
Herd the alpha army, I don't think works.
No, alphas, no. Although, I mean, their Lycans got reduced in points, so maybe it's a little bit better, but I don't know. Guardian Brutes with sharpness are also fun, so.
Okay, next up is the Order of the Green Lady. Reading off its changes, Order of the Thorn, the special phalanx melee 3 unit that they have, and it's also defense 5. They dropped in points. Devoted is their special caster. I think she dropped in points slightly, and the heal is now purchasable separately. The big problem with her is that she doesn't inspire unless inside the formation. And the banner called the Exemplar Adjutant gets very inspiring, and he has this funky new rule called Entangling Roots. In the movement phase, after this unit has completed its order, point at an enemy unit within 18 inches. That target unit cannot benefit from Fury and Headstrong for its next turn. So I've tried this. The biggest problem is I have to nominate at the movement phase before the combats are completed. So I've nominated a unit every turn, and it only ever had any effect for one of its 6 turns. Because even you look at the combat, right? I'm going to charge this on an average of 6. This unit should get wavered. So I point at that unit. Then a lot of times, like either I roll a little bit higher on the nerf roll and I route the unit completely, or I roll a little bit under and I don't even waver the unit. So a lot of times you're pointing at the unit where you don't know whether you'll benefit from the loss of Headstrong and Fury. Yep, very minimal changes to this army, but it is quite popular in which part of US again?
East Coast.
Right.
Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, spared.
They got that big buff 2 editions ago where the Forsaken became regular and Crushing 1, Thunderous 1. On top of that, the Order of the Redemption also changed to Crushing 1 and Thunderous 1, which are the 2 units that see a lot of play. And the big thing about them being able to run Alpha Strike very effectively is because of their chaff options of Unicorns and Pegasus. Before that, I was always scratching the head of what do I do to have a little bit of shooting in the list. Turns out just running 3 Unicorns is the answer. But now you lose the native Lightning Bolt. I'm not sure if Order of the Green Lady player would even buy the Lightning Bolt back, because if you multiply it by 3, that's a lot of points, 105. One thing I do note is that the push scenario, now requiring separate units to carry the token, might make it not viable to have an all speed 10 list, speed 8, speed 10 list anymore. So you might want to bring some slow units to carry tokens. And yeah, I was toying with the idea of it inherited the Bray Hunter changes. So I was toying with the idea of running Bray Hunter to be effective flanking units while putting out shooting attacks. I've yet to play a game with the Clash changes going live, but anyone like to chime in?
Yeah, I like Bray Hunters in this army as well. I do want to comment on the push scenario because it's unfortunately pretty poorly worded right now, where as written, I believe you can carry all of your tokens on a single unit, but you can only score one of those tokens that are being carried by a unit. And I think the biggest issue and the reason why this is going to probably stay the same is because there's wording in the game where when you route an enemy unit in melee, you have to take the token. So there's not an option to not take the token. So having a scenario where you are forced to not have multiple tokens, but then forced in a situation where you have to pick up multiple tokens, it's just kind of a nightmare with the rules right now. So we'll see exactly what they FAQ to come out with it. But assuming that you can just have one unit be slow and carry all the treasure across the board and then drop it and let everybody else jump on and score it, I think Order of the Green Lady are still going to be fine at Alpha Strike. But if that's not the case, then yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I was speaking to Marcelo because he was one of the main ones running Order of Green Lady in the US.
Just won Nerdhammer a month ago.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, did he? Yeah. Well, the biggest change for him will be the unicorns. That'll be the biggest change. So he has to come up with another idea for the shooting side of it. And yeah.
I spoken with him 1 or 2 weeks ago. He said that he'll just drop all the shooting. He'll just still take unicorns. He took 2 regiments of men-at-arms to be objective scoring units, whether it's to hold loot tokens or to hold a zone in the back or objective.
Yeah.
So still a strong army. I think one of the reason why it's successful as an Alpha Strike army is because of the speedy, both in the hammer and the chaff options are really good. And on top of that, the Forsaken being a flying horde, right? The best thing about the Forsaken is that it's the cheapest one. So that's why you can spam multiple units of it. I think some people even talk about bringing 5 hordes of it without feeling too big of a pinch. They also come with built-in waiver mitigation in Headstrong, which is great. So yeah, being the cheapest and yet have waiver mitigation is what works for them.
We didn't talk about it much of the unicorn, but there's, even with no spells, they're one of the best at taking the library of magic spells. So Host Shadow Beast is just a natural fit on one of them. So even if you don't pay for the lightning bolt, you can just throw Host Shadow Beast 3 on one and you'll have a good time with it.
Also, do you pay for the lightning bolt when you can take Alchemist Curse instead?
That is true too. Like you can go 1 lightning bolt, 1 Alchemist Curse, 1 Host Shadow Beast, and just kind of have a time with that.
It is an expensive body chassis to run Alchemist Curse on, to be fair, 120.
It is.
Yeah. But yeah, all good options. If you want to keep them cheap, you can always give them Blade of Slashing or Mace of Crushing to have that pseudo 4 attacks. That does improve their reliability in grounding or dealing a wound on a unit because they are not mighty. So if they fail to do a wound, you can just go through them.
I think another good option would be just giving them Hex from the library as well, because we're going to see a lot of casters.
I know some people have been talking about just not running the unicorns, and you just take another horde of Forsaken. And you just
because why not?
The solution is just bring more Forsaken, right? Okay, moving on. Goblins. So the Sharpsticks got cheaper, but the main thing to note is that their regiment is still unit strength 2, horde is still unit strength 3. So Fleaback Chariots, they got cheaper, I think. They got brutal. The short bows now are an optional upgrade. Trombones went up by 5 points, 65 to 70. Giant unit strength 2. Baggett got nerfed. The blast becomes D2. Bigot, which is the hero option, the middling hero option, has a special upgrade, the sharpest stick. Vicious, Aura Vicious melee on sharp sticks only for 10 points. Flaggett has an Aura Strider infantry only on top of very inspiring. Wiz dropped in, it just got stripped off the base lightning bolt and you can purchase it back. It'll be the same points if you do. So I've been playing Goblins for a big part of this year. I'm quite disappointed. I'm not sure I'll run sharp sticks over Rabble, to be honest. Without the extra unit strength, I don't find it that worth it. You might say that, Phalanx, when Phalanx happens, when it takes effect, it's really awesome. To multiply the sharp stick across 4 to 6 hordes, that adds up to 60 to 90 points. And for Goblins, it's like every 40 over points is a wizard. So that's Goblin economy you're talking about. So like 15 points in another army is no big deal, but 15 points in Goblins is like just a little bit more and I get a wizard. Just a little bit more and I get a trombone. Just a little bit more, I get a sharp stick thrower. So I'm not sure about the sharp sticks.
Yeah, but you could have a Vicious Strider sharp sticks page.
Which is totally not worth it. I calculated the math in my head. I'm like, Vicious on those sharp sticks that hit on 5s? I don't know. And the Flaggett, I think having very inspiring is not bad. the thing about it is if you take a Flagate with a boomstick versus you take a Wiz with Inspiring Talisman. Last time it used to be the same in terms of points and what it effectively does. But now the Flagate just has a very inspiring bigger bubble. On top of that Strider Aura, which may or may not be, I think sometimes it will come in handy. Most of the time, it's when they bounce off your Rebel Horde and the adjacent Rebel Horde gets to flank. But if it's in the forest, it will be hitting 50 dice on 6s. Now it'll be hitting 50 dice on 5s. That is mainly that. Some people talk about the Strider Aura with Luggage, but I don't find the Luggage that they are basically Berserker profiles, which are not popular even in other armies. They are very expensive in terms of Goblins. 160 points for a regiment, and your Horde of Rebel is only 125. And a Horde of Sharp 6 is only 140. So I think, in my opinion, the best build is still the shooting build, which kind of got toned down a peg with the Bangit and the Trombones. I think the Bangit is not going to be taken now. There's talk of just taking a Flagate with of Dragon, because that has Shattering as well. With Fireball 8, it's most likely to be almost as effective with Bangit, especially with the D2 Bangits. So yeah, the thing about shooting or other melee builds of Goblins is that you kind of get jammed up because you run a lot of hordes and the opponent have the agency or ability to move their units or charge their units in certain ways that gum up your lines, and your effective fighting units might not be able to get into combat. And once that happens, you're on the losing end of the stick. Yeah, with that said, I did notice Shannon Shoemaker's list, which was Legions of Chariots with Giants, which is very interesting. It removes the gem problem because if it becomes a speedy goblin list. For the interest of the other host, it's 3 Legions of Chariots and 3 regiments of Rebel, 3 Giants, and 6 hero slots. So it's 3 Troll Bruisers, 2 King on Chariots, and Kuzlo and Mat 4. So it's an all-scoring speedy goblin combat list, which doesn't rely on Rebel hordes. So yeah, I think that's all I have to ramble about goblins.
He won 2 Crossroads at that list, and they were cross edition.
Hey, a win's a win, though. I don't know how he did it either, but the man got resurrected, stayed the same, and still won. So
yeah, I do have to mention
Kyle
did win with a melee goblin just recently.
How? Yeah, all right.
I know he was running the formation because I heard from Jake Chirapika, Chica, if you will, that the formation bang sticks did like 30 wounds in a charge every time they charged.
That's hot dice. That's just hot dice, man.
As they should.
Goblins do. That is their game plan.
All right, if there's no one has anything else to add, let's move on to the next army. We are coming close to the end.
I'm going to give them a letter ranking. They are still S tier.
All right. I'm going to
put them up there.
Goblins to win Masters 2024.
I'm not saying that because someone has to bring it. Like, you still have to paint the army, but if you do,
there's some people that have it painted already, Joey. I faced one of them at Crossroads.
3 of them.
Yeah, let's hope that someone with Goblins has been said to be one of the best lists for so long, but we're still waiting for somebody to win Masters or a huge event with it. All right, next, Halflings. Spear Spikes got cheaper, but because they got cheaper, their unit strength went down. I think that's what happened. So that's pretty sad. Stalwarts are the elite infantry, so they have an optional upgrade to gain elite melee and inspiring. Poachers, basically they were range 4+ in a formation. Now that formation is gone, so they are innate range 4+. Unit strength is 2. Wild Lancers, they got slightly cheaper. Chuggers, which are the heavier cav option. Yep, Thunderous 1 changed to Thunderous 2. Points adjusted. Force Troll Gunners, this one is really interesting to me, is that it gained Piercing 1. Just flat out Piercing 1 for the same cost. Iron Beast got tweaked quite a bit. It lost the Aura Spellward special rule because it's a Titan. Its unit strength 2, points 210. I'm not sure if that got more expensive or less. It is now inspiring, which is great. So you don't have to run. I think previously you have to buy Pride of the Shires to be inspiring. Now the vanilla Iron Beast has inspiring as well. Makes it worthwhile to run multiple Iron Beasts. The Pride of the Shires now only give Aura Headstrong, but I think it's cheaper at 15 points. Gunnery Throw on Sergeant. Currently, Sergeant on Throw. Throw on Sergeant. Sergeant on Throw. Piercing 1. Also got the Tinker keyword. Oh, the Throw Gunners also got the Tinker keyword, which can only be a good thing, right? Because you can get buffs from that. Master Captain, which I think they decided that he is the banner equivalent. Very inspiring. And you get to purchase Aura Strider Ravenous only for 15 points. Sorcerer, you can purchase an upgrade to reroll once for your Gastrum for 10 points, but you cannot be mounted. Feast Master, you can buy Relentless or mount on a mount. And the formation, which is based off the ambush box, you run 2 Wild Runners, I believe. Is that the shooting version? I think they're the shooting versions. 2 Wild Runner troops and 1 Spear Spike Regiment. The regiment or Spear Spike gets Gastromancy. Basically, it gains the sorcerer's abilities. And good cooking. When they're within 6 inch of Gastromancy, they have Fearless and Ranged Elite. Pretty interesting formation, because one of the key things of sorcerer is you are taking a non-scoring unit, but now you get to Gastromancy on a scoring unit. The buffs to the troops are not too shabby either, but troops are still very soft. Yeah, I think overall, the Halflings were a list, took a while to be unlocked. They're still a relatively new army. Suddenly at Masters, was it Masters? No, Clash of Kings UK, there were a lot of Halfling players coming out. And even one of them won the Clash of Kings, and it's Peter from Poland, I believe, with a list that all Halfling players were like, how did he win with this list? Because everyone's scratching their heads. He must be an awesome, very good player, because that means there's a depth to the Halfling lists, right? A lot of people are bringing very different lists, and I'm not sure if some of these buffs are a little premature, being that, people are starting to figure out Halflings and they just flat out got a lot of buffs. Forest Throw Gunners, just getting flat out piercing 1 without any cost seems really, really good. I think Adam did mention to me in playtesting that seems way too good. Yeah, that's all I have to say about the list. Anyone like to add on?
Yeah, so I think in combination with poachers just being flat range 4 up for the discounted price they're extremely potent. And then you add it, and they unlock, and you add in Forest Troll Gunners, and even the Forest Troll Gunnery Sergeant, who was already good, in my opinion, at getting Piercing 1 for free and the Tinker keyword. It just seems, like you said, a little premature. I think a lot of these buffs were not needed, and we already were seeing a lot of these units being played. Man, there's going to be some crazy Halfling builds out there, is what I have to say.
Yeah, well, that's range 18 on those guns too, isn't it?
Yeah, the only issue is they don't have Scout.
Is.
Range 18, the only thing is that they don't have Scout, but if with range 18, there's a good chance that you can stay still for a good portion of the game.
Yeah, that's very, very good.
18 shots, 4 plus piercing 1.
They've also
Scout
got
or steady aim?
Come again?
They don't have Scout, but do you mean steady aim, Paige?
They don't have steady aim. Did I say Scout?
Yeah.
Right, I meant steady aim. They don't have steady aim.
Right, because the ideal turn is turn 1, you move them into the forest where they have Pathfinders, they can charge out, and then they stay
there the whole game.
And the tanks are quite good, the Iron Beasts. They're decent combat, they've got the shooting, now they've got inspiring, great token holders.
They are cheap access to defense.
Yeah. And I'm not sure, are they Tinker as well? Because you've got those auras with...
yes, it is both Tinker and Ravenous.
Right, yeah. So, yeah.
Radiance of Life from the Engineer.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. The Radiance of Life is a big thing on a Defense 6 unit that can cover a lot of jobs for you. So I've been playing against them quite a bit lately, and, yeah, they're a good army.
Yeah, I think they're due for kind of a breakout year in a similar boat to like Nightstalkers, where it's kind of they're a brand new army that gets introduced, so it takes a year or two for people to even just build it, paint it. It takes time, and now it's probably about due for people to actually start playing Halflings. Riftforged Orcs are, I think, in the same boat.
Yeah, you know what makes a Halfling even more viable to players right now is Twilight Kin, because of the weakness out there. Halflings do have spell ward in most of their units, so that's just a natural resistance to those weakness 4 shots.
I don't agree with that entirely, but
Yeah, Yeah, I was going to say, I think that a lot of the uniqueness of halflings comes from the units that don't have the spell ward. And I think the Iron Beast losing the spell ward is really the biggest disappointment in all of these changes. I really liked him having Aura spell ward to potentially cover some of the units that don't get the love.
Yeah, it doesn't cover the lawnmowers anymore.
Well, you're right. I have to look into detail to see what does not have native spell ward and no longer able to get spell ward through the loss of that aura.
It's pretty much all the infantry and cavalry have spell ward, but the large infantry, large cav, all the monsters,
right?
Don't get it.
Yeah.
The harvesters and the forest trolls,
Yeah.
grenadiers.
I think
which
poachers,
means some of the characters equivalents as well don't have that.
I think poachers are a really excellent unit. I've been encouraging my buddy Gab to take poachers in the formation even before this edition, which basically essentially becomes the same unit. It used to be a unit strength 3 and it used to have self-inspiring in the formation, but that range 4+ with scout, just move it up into terrain and stay there and shoot the whole game. 12 shots hitting on 4s, and the big thing is they have spell ward and stealthy, which means anything shooting back at them is hitting on 6s. It's ridiculous, and
I can vouch for that, having played Twilight or Nightstalkers with all spell ward and all stealthy. So turns out it's a good combination of rules, guys.
Yeah, I've been facing them particularly lately, and they do so much damage to units. They've been shooting off the succubi units before I get across the table.
Yeah, I played against them with goblins. They just shot at the rabble. Even shooting at rabble, it deals a lot of wounds at 24-inch range. When my wingets are visible, they'll just shoot at the wingets, take the cover penalty. It's fine. Still 24 shots on 5s, still pumping out lots of wounds per turn. And finally, when my goblins slog up the table close enough to him, they charge out and they hit harder than they shoot. So it's like, what?
Yeah, well, they've got a lot of other shooting to combine with it too. So
yeah, plus, yeah, it's quite interesting that you can run lots of shooting in Halfling and it comes from various sources. So it's like it adds up. When you look at the list, you might not think that it's that effective shooting, but it just all adds up. Then the engineers with their rifles hitting on 3+.
Yep.
Yep. With
that was the one in point with the bonus. So if you take the item that gives you D3 attacks, that doesn't affect the engineer, does it? Rifle of 1 attack for melee, but 4 attacks on the rifle.
Yes. Are you going to ask that for every?
Oh, no, this is the one that I was thinking about because they were using it and I didn't catch what you'd said at the start. So
that is right. The Rampage or Slayer item would only work in melee.
Right. That's what it was after. It was,
So, yeah, the shots being on the weapon means it doesn't work with the Rampage. It only works if it's on the base profile.
It's about 30 units I copped.
And I do want to shout out the engineer as well as that new horde upgrade for the stalwarts. I haven't really seen it much, but I feel like the stalwarts gaining elite and inspiring with their upgrade, and then when you take the engineer, you can take an upgrade for 10 points.
You can make something tinker, and then you can
or 5 points to make it tinker, and gives it iron resolve as well. Like that horde of stalwarts becomes pretty devastating, and it can still take a magic item on top of that. So
it's a pretty good combo, isn't it? Engineer's great by himself. He's brilliant. He's got the Radiance of Life. He's got the rifle. He's very, very good. Firing.
3+ piercing too. Yep, I've been the receiving end of 2 engineers for very long, for the whole of this year. Right, now let's move on to Kingdoms of Men. Crossbows, reduced pot shots. Spear Phalanx got cheaper. The Ensnare upgrade, did it get cheaper as well? I think it did. And Beast Cavalry, last year, we erroneously thought that you can take both the flying and the vicious upgrades. Now you actually can take them, which makes them, if you take it together with their army special upgrade, what's it called again? Indomitable Will. They are probably the best flying horde option in terms of durability. And Chariots, cheaper, got brutal. Shooting attacks are separately purchased. You can purchase Indomitable Will on them. Cannon gets secured position, but it's an ignore concealed war engine. Giants unit strength 2. Army Standard Bearer gets Life Leech 1, infantry only aura. Wizard got dropped to 20 points because it lost the default spells. And this one becomes interesting because you can purchase a flying Pegasus and makes it a scoring flying unit. Captain, they just give it a redeploy special rule instead of the bunch of special text. The Titan Monarch becomes unit strength 2. So, Adam, you have played Kingdoms of Men recently. I think it's more because of the very good neutral hero, but nonetheless, the neutral special character in the tournament. But nonetheless, you did take Kingdoms of Men.
I took it to the next tournament even after that without a special character that was buffed. So it turns out the Kingdoms of Men are a pretty good army. And I think some of their MVPs got just even better because the Spear Phalanx was one of the best units in the army for me every game. And it got 20 points cheaper in a regiment. So it's just ridiculous how a regiment of these guys is going to be 120 points with Phalanx and if you want to give them items and Indomitable Will, like you can, but I think they're perfect just as a defensive block, just that way. They're so good, in fact, that I think that taking a horde of them is actually really good as well, and giving them the ability to kind of grind out even more with Hammer and Measured Force or something. It just makes Spear Phalanx extremely, extremely good. The one thing I really wish this game had was the ability to stack your auras, because I think there would be a build around an infantry block army with 3 army standard bearers, just giving Life Leech 3 to your basic infantry units. But unfortunately, you can't stack auras. Yeah, so only one Life Leech aura can be benefited from at any point in time. But you could give like that horde of Spear Phalanx Life Leech item and then have this banner behind them, and they can recover 2 wounds every turn as well. So I don't know, it would turn them into almost an undead like army. But otherwise, the Beast Cap change, I think, for competitive purposes is the biggest. Being able to take both those options is a long time coming. And I've already seen people that are sending me lists with like 3 to 5 hordes of Beast Cav fully kitted out. And, they're also bringing, triple ballista and triple heroes on Pegasus and just going complete flying circus Kingdoms of Men, which is absolutely something you can do. And I'd be surprised if we don't see at least 1 or 2 of those meme lists throughout the year.
It kind of sucks for me. I built my Varangur army at the start of this year to be Kingdoms of Men. Decided that the list wasn't quite viable enough to run and like try to make a run for Masters, even though I couldn't go this year. So I ended up running it as Varangur instead. And now my 2 hordes of flying Beast Cav are perfectly viable. So who knows? Maybe I'll end up running Kingdoms of Men nowadays with the change. I don't think you're going to see good Kingdoms of Men list running like 4 or 5 hordes of Beast Cav, but I think you'll probably see a winning list with this that runs 2 or 3. The option to have 3 flying Pegasus wizards plus 3 generals on Winged Beast, the idea should be similar to Order the Green Lady. I just don't know how well it's going to play on the table if you're going to have quite the right mix of chaff plus hammer.
And I think they already had that with the hero on Pegasus being a 90-point option. The issue that Kingdoms of Men always ran into was unlocking all 6 of those heroes, which, when you're taking 3 generals at almost 200 points a pop, it's pretty pricey to try and find 6 unlocks for heroes.
Yeah, what I think you'll see is like 2 hordes of flying Beast Cav loaded out, and then like regiments of Spear Phalanx kind of checkerboarding just to hold the line.
I'm also a huge fan of archers. I mean, they're cheap, they unlock, and they provide a little bit of extra range threat and helps you play certain scenarios that the rest of your army doesn't want to be doing.
We haven't talked about removing Potshot because I'm pretty sure it happened and no one thought about it. But I do think Kingdoms of Men Empire, Dust, and Ogres are the three armies where it's really valuable. The crossbow blocks without pot shot become much more bearable to take. I view them very similar to, like, if you take a trooper regiment, you're kind of taking a volley gun, and this volley gun scores and moves. You can treat it very similar to that now. You're not going to have to deal with the reload, so it at least has some play. I don't know that we're going to see it a ton, but I think in like King's Men and especially Ogres and EOD where they have good crossbow units, those units got a pretty big buff.
There's definitely a Kingdoms of Men build where you take hordes of rifles.
Yeah.
Because 20 attacks, even though they hit on 5s, now moving and they can hit on 6s is pretty decent. But piercing 20 shots, stuff's going to die eventually.
Just a slight tangent. When we started third edition, there was a lot of reining in on flying hordes, making them irregular, and a lot of reining in on shooting units. Those shackles were gradually removed through the iterations, and now like we're seeing a lot of flying hordes and shooting. So I'm not sure if we should have the reining in should have been kept. What do you guys think?
My theory is we're going to see a similar reining in when 4th edition comes. But I think it's going to be a different style. It's not going to be a regular. I think we're going to see a lot less speed 10 hammers. I think it's like Dracons, like the Beast Cav, are just going to get capped at like speed 8. That's where my head would go.
Yeah.
Rather than do this, we'll make them all irregular, and now you can't play with your army anymore. It's going to be, we're going to give you a slower version of the army so that the infantry can better play against it without having to castle.
Yeah, I would think so as well, because irregular is also sometimes not doing things as intended. Like
it hurts a lot of people in edition changes. I have an all Mantic Elf army that I haven't played since 2nd ed because they made Forest Shamblers irregular.
Right.
So I lost half my unlocks.
I always view the edition changes and the cock updates whenever there's a heavy hand one way or the other, whether it's buffs or nerfs. It's more like a pendulum swinging. It was either too strong, and then they try to. I think the intent of every change should be to try to bring it back to a center line. But a lot of times they overshoot, and a buff just brings a unit way above the center line. And then a nerf, like making irregular units for the flying speed 10, or to nerf shooting as hard as they did, brings it well below that standardized line. Because I think the big thing we also saw at the beginning of 3rd edition was the rise of war machines, because they didn't get the huge nerfs that all the other shooting units got. So now that we're bringing those shooting units back, we're seeing less and less war machines, which personally I would prefer for a play style. But now war machines not being, towards the center line, we're seeing them getting the new secure position rule to see if they can inch them closer to that center line again. We'll see if it works.
Yeah, I think the edition change would change certain things. There's more design room to play about how to balance the different elements of units, like what Joey mentioned. Well, tangent over. Let's come back to League of Rhordia. So I think it inherited the Kingdoms of Men changes where it's applicable, and then the Dogs of War, which has various different upgrades. Don't know the details, but I think they probably got cheaper because they all contain like phalanx and snare in there. So most of them probably got cheaper.
Yeah, they all got pretty significantly cheaper across the board, because some of these upgrades, I remember a Horde upgrade used to be 90 points, I think, for the first one. So a 25-point reduction in a Horde is pretty substantial.
Halfling are amend speed to 5. Were they speed 4 before? Might be. Polygon amend speed to 5 at the Halfling. Rhordia has kind of fallen off the map quite a bit. I think they haven't got much interesting changes for a long time. So I don't have much opinion on that. Anybody would like to chime in?
Rhordia is the hidden gem. And once somebody brings out the one build that they have, they're going to catch people out, and they're going to win several games with it, because Rhordia has one thing that no other army has, which is Aura Spell Ward.
Is it on?
It's on one of their halfling individuals. It's only like a 15-point upgrade for them. So I think this is the addition of spells, and getting Aura Spell Ward is pretty good. And then the other buffs they've inherited from Kingdoms of Men, I think, is enough to put them at a solid place.
I
Right.
don't see it changing particularly much. Like all three changes. The halfling keyword's not even on the companion.
We'll have to let
It says human.
Mantic know about that. All right, yeah, that what you say is right. The spell what aura is them being the only army that has it right now might make things interesting. But otherwise, yeah, I think the Beast Cavalry on the Kingdoms of Men looks more interesting and is the one that gets people's attention.
Yeah, it's weird that League of Rhordia didn't
Rhordia
get
had the better
change.
Beast Cav before this, so it's only
Honor Guard.
natural they got nerfed. Honor Guard.
It's weird they didn't get the Jugger change. The best League of Rhordia player in the Mid-Atlantic switched to Ogres recently, and he described it as kind of he was playing League of Rhordia, but better for his play style. So I think they're just kind of in between right now. That they're not getting a lot of focus. I don't know if Mantic's going to even keep them with this kind of update.
Yeah, one of the things about Mantic is there's so many armies in Kings of War, even with the number of members of the RC and the number of playtesters being recruited, there's just not enough to cover all the factions, and definitely some of them will get less attention. Next up, Nightstalkers. This has most of the changes has come early in the army refresh, but Spectres are gone. Planet Apparition is merged into the Mind Screech profile. It also, I think it's also different in that it has Radiance of Life, Heal 7, Mind Fog 2, its combat abilities or ensnare ability has went off, I think. Coming back, 2 new units, Tormentors, which are jumping Reaper-like units, Ravagers, which are Boomer-like units. Shadowhounds got pretty interesting. They have this thing called Ferocious Charge. If they're not this odd and they make charge that's not hindered, it gets +1 to hit. So from 4+ to hit becomes 3+ to hit, which is very juicy. Shadowhawk, unit rank 2, Terror. It has that Rampage 8 special rule. Mind Screech having the Planar Apparition option. Horror just stripped off its base Lightning Bolt. And yeah, Adam, what do you think of the changes?
I feel like we've had enough time to really mess around with these guys for a while. I think that they have a different build that they can play with the addition of the Ravengers. There's some fun stuff you can do with Ensnare and Wind Blast and moving your opponent's position while also threatening a heavy shooting line. So I could see, that in the hands of somebody that knows exactly what they're doing could be pretty potent. I do really like the Terror change overall. I think Terror was clearly the bastard monster / Titan option in the army, and now it's gone up to well in line with the others. So it's actually a debate whether you take a Terror, a Planar Apparition / Mind Screech now, or a Shadow Hulk. So I do really like those changes.
I think the Terror's too good, personally. I do. I think it's overpowered.
That's that good pendulum swing.
Yeah,
It does pay the points for, though.
Bloody hell. Yeah.
40 points is a pretty price to pay when you have a Shadow Hulk for 15 points cheaper staring at you.
Yeah, but it just munches through units and you can't kill it. So that's my personal thing. I think it's too strong.
I know Tom's been talking about a 2x Shadow Hulk, 2x Terror build, which I'm sure is something Dustin Howard's doing. That's pretty good. Like you get a best of both worlds. You're going to have your 20 attack on infantry or your plus D3 Slayer Shadow Hulk. Kind of run them both on there. Nightstalkers are still just a really good all-rounder army, right? They can kind of approach most problems however they want. They're one of the most flexible armies when it comes to tweaking for a local meta, just because they really don't have to play within their hero slots. They can play all Monster Titan if they want to. They can mess around with their unlocks however they want. So they can kind of, you, the player, can shape your army to fit what your local area has better with Nightstalkers than almost any other army in the game. That kind of flexibility, I think, is supreme for them. I don't think that's really changed. The only good things, when me and Adam were on playtest for Nightstalkers, like we got the Terror to something that Jeff said was broken. So I find that a win because it was unusable before that.
Yeah, well, I played Nightstalkers for a long time too. And if I was playing them, I would definitely put it in. But it's like the greater air elemental. I used to play with them, but I thought it was over the top. And I think that's the same with this. But time will tell. We had a number of them at a tournament in Melbourne. There's 3 good players used them, and they had between 2 and 3 terrors each, and they didn't win the tournament. But so you could take it off that, but that's a one-off. I
think the big thing for the terror is it lost the spell ward aura compared to the last year when it had access to that. If it had this profile and spell ward, that would definitely have been broken. But
what's a spell going to do to it, really?
Yeah, but at defense 4+, 18, 19, and stealthy, that means you're only hurting it with spells and with high regen.
Yeah, regen 4+ and snare.
I wouldn't want to be shooting at it unless it's the last thing to shoot.
Yeah.
But it is a Titan, so height 6. There's hardly going to be cover for it. And then a lightning bolt spam or a high level fireball that would take a chunk out of the terror. Granted, you want to focus fire it. So
yeah, I'm sure there are ways, like flyers too, getting into the flanks. They're about the only ways I can see of killing it. You put them 1-on-1 with just about any unit in the game, and they're going to beat it.
Yeah,
don't put it 1-on-1.
Like in front, bang.
Charge it with 4 things.
Yeah, 75 mils isn't that big.
Right, I'm not sure.
The terror does not like other monsters as well. Like it tickles.
Slayer.
It tickles other things. Like even a monster that's not going to kill it. It just doesn't stand up to large infantry, large cap. Like it'll go. The Rampage 8 is really where it actually blows through units. Otherwise, the 12 attacks only crush 1, hitting on 4s. It's really not going to go through anything else in the game quickly.
Hitting on trees,
even if it lives.
When I played against it, my main focus was to get something big into it so that it wouldn't get that Rampage 8, but it would still kill everything. It'd just take a little bit longer. I had no chance of killing them, but they would just take a bit longer. If I put infantry into them, they'd just straight through them, off it in one turn.
With the ensnare, high enough point, and the regen, right?
Yeah, it's just...
the only way to kill it is in the flank, I guess.
That's what I say, a flyer in the flank.
The ideal way is you throw something in the front, it can't one turn, and then you hit whatever was next to it really hard, and then turn.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't throw anything that he can rampage on because there's a high chance he's gonna run around it.
Yeah,
right. I don't think there's a Ravager build out there. Like they lost Spectres. Granted, they were lousy unit to begin with, but it could have been buffed to be a serviceable, trashy shooting unit. But now they don't have that to go along with Ravagers. Ravagers are like a boomer equivalent, but boomers have kind of fallen out of favor in the ogre list even. So I don't see it being different in the Nightstalker list, and they have much less shooting options all around, if I'm not wrong, other than Mind Screechers and Horrors running Lightning Bolt if you want to add some extra shooting.
The Banshee as well.
The Banshee has lost the ability to take items with the
double surge, or the double wind blast enthrall.
Right.
Now, ideally, you would run Ravagers with something like Shakira. You would run it with Mind Screeches, and you'd be like, shoot, enthrall into combat. Shakira picks the unit up, or shoot, wind blast out of range. I think that build's it's a little bit too technical to ever be kind of fully realized, because it sounds great on paper when you're only dealing with one unit that can reach you, but in a real game you're probably dealing with 3 or 4 units.
Because Ravagers is 12-inch, right? By the time you move up to shoot something, that means you're also in
it's controlling all of the units. When you're up against like dwarves, you can make it work, but against other lists you can struggle really hard, and especially if you're in an alpha heavy area.
Oh, hold your horses, I forgot page 2. Portal of Despair, unit strength 2. Butcher Flash Reaper got nerfed to, I think there's a waiver value and Fury.
It used to be -14.
Yeah, it was.
Void Lurker in strength 2, Dream Hunter, cheaper, but still no one takes it. The formation, 2 Tormentor Regiments, Dream Hunter, all gain redeploy. I don't think that's popular as well.
No.
Nobody will play.
So
no one plays Dream Hunter.
Turns out page 2 didn't matter anyway, other than Portal of Despair maybe seeing play.
One person who plays Dream Hunter. He's on the RC. I think the Dream Hunter is actually pretty fine. It's just hard to pay for it.
Yeah.
But in an army that doesn't need individuals and you're paying for one of the most expensive ones to really do what?
I would never
I
pay
don't
for
know.
the Dream Hunter when Shakira exists 20 points cheaper.
Yeah. And Shakira actually has some crushing strength built in. The Dream Hunter being crushing 1 is just horrendous.
All right, Northern Alliance. I think I won't read through the changes. Their changes came out quite a while back. Are there any that's specific to just this book? There may not be. Other than
Only
unit
the
strength.
unit strength, the
Titans.
spellcaster changes, and the Icekin Hunter's going to unit strength 2.
Right.
Pretty sure those
Are
are.
the ice elementals got 2 extra inches?
Yeah, the Naiads went down in points as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Realistically, Northern Alliance got it it's kind of like Twilight Kin, where it almost feels like a full rewrite. It feels like a whole new army.
I know a lot of people are trying the Frozen and get the Vicious going, but I don't think it's worked out particularly great. Not game breaking by any means.
No, I've seen Frozen used much more for just range control, which is good because I didn't see that before these changes. Actually getting ranged down by Frozen.
Yeah, in playtesting, a lot of them came with free Tundra Fighters, which I gave the feedback during playtesting that you're just giving them free Vicious because they're taking Shrimp anyway. So then they made it a purchasable upgrade, which then probably is not worth purchasing most of the time, but certain units do get it for free, like the Tains on Frostfangs and the Lords on Frostfangs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the half-elf berserkers, I think, get it as well built in. They were one of the infantry units struggling to see play.
I really like the formation. What do you guys think? Frostcore Regiment giving rally 1 to half-elves only. The half-elves berserker gets crushing 1.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think that when you throw in the Talinar Standard as well, you can get red half-elf berserkers up to a -20, if I'm not mistaken. That's pretty spicy. They're still paper. They still die to a stiff breeze, but 20 nerve, you got to have enough attacks to get them there still. So,
yep.
I think the army's in a very, very good place. The Ravens, unlike in Free Dwarves, I think the Ravens are very takeable here. They play much better with that 18-inch shooting range. You still have to protect them very well, but they work hand in hand with ice elementals. Unlike when we get to Varangur, the Tundra Fighters will actually happen for this army. So it's relevant here, at least on the hero options. Maybe not so much in the infantry. I don't know that you're taking half-elf berserkers and ice elementals. If we're talking like top flight competitive lists, you're probably still just going to take something more like Frost Claws and ice elementals. But the list, I think, has a lot more life than it did before. And it's no longer racist, so that immediately gives it.
Are you sure?
It's less racist.
Okay. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the Frostclaw Riders. I think they're way too expensive for what they do. I might be in the minority, but I just see a very expensive defense 4 unit that in an army that doesn't really have any wound recovery mechanics.
Yeah, that's why I only thought that the formation one with regiment has a support role to play. It also gets a bump in the 12-14. Let's move on. Varangur. So they inherited the tribesman profile. Reavers amends nerf to -14 and 18. I think that's an increase in nerf.
It is. And they get Tundra Fighter for free.
Yeah. Fallen got cheaper. Magus, I think, just got the spell stripped off.
Which is good. That worked.
So you can just bring him as a support caster if you don't want the lightning bolt, right?
Yeah, I ran 3 of them at the Masters. Obviously, some of the changes will hit. Like I took Alchemist Drain Life, and then I took the Heal D3 one. What's it called? Celestial, yeah. Just sat him at the back. And because I'd like to run them before, but with a 40 points for a Lightning Bolt 4 or whatever it was, it just wasn't worth it. But it made them much more play.
Cursed Sun, Wild Charge 1 special rule, upgrades with the church, lower to defense 4, gets crushing 3. Cannot take on a horse. Lord Tundra Fighter, special rule, Snowfox. Tain, Tundra Fighters, Snowfox. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, you recently took Varangur to Master?
Yes, yeah, I took it to Masters. Yeah, the army performed well. My dice didn't perform too well. the army was good and solid, kept everything from before. So yeah, I think it's in a decent place. Can still win tournaments.
I ran all this year. I lost 5 games over 4 GTs, 1 to Basileans Alpha, 3 to Order of the Green Lady Alpha, and then 1 that I rolled Snake Eyes on top of 6 to win the game. And then that happened. So I think the army, it's still very playable. I do find that if you're going to play like an Alpha Strike Varangur list, that Order of the Green Lady just does it so much better and has been doing it. It's hard to run a speed 9 list like I ran Varangur into a speed 10 or the Green Lady list and go, cool. I spent an awful lot of points to go this fast, and you spent less points to go faster.
Yeah. Yeah, I found the flying was the biggest, like flying units was the biggest problem to come up
With the
against.
Green Lady Force of Nature, it was very, very hard to play against them.
Yeah, agreed.
Sounds like Varangur need a phalanx option in the army. Is all I'm hearing.
Yeah, what actually hurt my list the most was the Clansman to Tribesman change, because my list just got 40 points more expensive and I gained nothing of value for my build. I do think it's one of the issues with theme lists where the change to Tribesman makes a lot of sense in Northern Alliance and did not make as much sense in Varangur.
Yeah. For a moment, I thought Adam would say that Varangur needs a flying horde.
Maybe that too, but no, Reavers just need to gain wings and speed and a speed 10 option.
All right. Ogres. Firstly, they have this unit that came from Vanguard, the Paymaster. Most notably, it has rallying 1 to the Merc keyword only, and it's very easy to know which units have the Merc keywords. Basically, it's all the units that were less taken, and that would include the Braves, the Warriors, the Boomers, the Hunters, the Shooters. So mainly the foot Ogres, except the one with the big shield, Siege Breakers, right? Goblin Sharpsticks got cheaper because they are the Phalanx units. Ogre Warriors, they can get this limited 3 upgrade to get redeploy. Hunters got slightly cheaper because they were an unit. Shooters lost Hotshot. Boomer Chariots, I think they got cheaper overall. The Stealthy Aura is now a unique upgrade, and if you take it, it's slightly more expensive than before. Giant is unit strength 2. The standard bearer didn't get any extra special rules. It just got very inspiring, I think, because it's already a scoring unit. The Warlock, let's see, the Lightning Bolt is stripped off. The Blood Boy is slightly cheaper. That's all for Ogres. Who would like to... Jeff, would you like to chime in for Ogres first?
I think the Hunters are a great unit, and going a bit cheaper, as you'll see even more of them being played. One thing I noted was the regiment and the horde, they both get the same D3 Slayer or whatever it is, which makes the regiment even better value because you're getting that extra bonus and sitting in woods with extra speed, which is great for them. I think this will also lead away from the siege breakers even more, so you won't see all the triple siege breaker hordes, that with the increase in their price, and that's a good thing. So I think we'll see a little bit more variety in the list, which is, it's a good thing. Paymaster sounds good.
Yeah, I think ever since Siege Breakers got more expensive, it's quite common for Ogre players to take 1 unit of Hunters to be in the forest and just have that Pathfinder in the list. And now it seems a little bit more interesting. People might still run 1 or 2 hordes of Siege Breakers as a core. I don't know if the Paymaster's rally on Merc is worth it though. What do you guys think?
I think it's worth it.
Yeah, me too. I think it is.
Our local club guy, Ed, he's looking at taking 1 Paymaster, but I so wish it was bracketed 2, not bracketed 1. Let him get up to rally 2 if you want to really stack the castle. I think that would be fun.
All right, it's a unique
anything
hero.
Anything that takes from 4 Warlocks is a plus in my book.
All right.
I think the biggest change is the stealthy boomers chariots being a little bit more expensive. It's still an option, but those guys were just default in whatever build of ogres you saw before, and I think they'll still be in most lists. But if you're taking those plus all the other things we had mentioned that went up in price, and I'm pretty sure the Warlocks didn't go down in price, but they, after you take a spell, I think they're actually 5 points more expensive when you add back in their lightning bolt, because they used to be 95 points and I think they're 100 now.
Right.
So those slight points increase, I think, will force a switch up in some way with kind of that standard build that I've come to see at events.
Do you think anybody's going to run the redeploy?
No.
Or is that just a wasted line? Because I want to see someone take 3 legions and redeploy them and figure out a way to actually change their deployment.
The thing is, everybody knows what the scenario is before the start of the game, and there's very few scenarios where you can actually play a gotcha on your opponent and move something. The other really crappy thing
does not matter on melee. It is kind of pointless on a melee unit. On a shooting unit, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree.
5 points for a regiment. That's not bad.
I'd almost rather it be scout. I think redeploy is even less useful than scout.
The main thing with redeploy is like your first 3 drops can be those 3 warrior regiments that you're going to put anywhere. So you get to see 3 drops from your opponent before you put your hordes down.
You're not spending many points on it. So
yeah, but the way I feel like Kings is played is, at least in Warhammer Fantasy, you wanted to have dead drops to see where that big bad thing was going. And with Kings, there's no real like Death Star unit that you are either trying to avoid or trying to track down and kill. And the scenarios almost never rely on your opponent and where they're placing their units. They're usually stationary objectives that you just have to get to at the end of the game. So if the objectives don't move and your opponent has no control over forcing you to go to a different objective, then redeploy is just useless, because I know where you're going to be at the end of the game. It's in the dominate circle, because that's where we're going to play.
I still think it might be useful in some scenarios.
Very niche ones. Like I'm looking at, are you going to get value out of it more often than not? And I think the answer is no.
That's why I say it's cheap enough for me to make it worthwhile having a go of using it if I've got the points left over. I'd look at putting it on
if you're taking the 3 regiments, do you throw like a scrying gem and just try to like high roll you do 7 drops before I deploy a unit strat? Like I used to do that with Ratkin, but with Ratkin you were shooting with what you redeployed, so it had a lot more value there.
Yeah, we'll see anyway.
Well, what I gained from this conversation is that if the scenarios become more dynamic, that might make redeploy more worthwhile, and that might be an interesting direction that the game will head towards, making the scenarios more dynamic and interesting.
Yeah, a lot of cases it won't make any difference, and some cases it will, as long as it's cheap enough.
Well, moving along, the Orcs, I thought they didn't get much, but looking at the changes, there's quite a bit. Long Axe got cheaper. Scout Raider Chariots got cheaper. Both are optional now. Core Chariots got cheaper, and both these chariots get brutal. Giant unit strength 2. Their Flag Bearer gets a very convoluted rule. Aura Rampage N, heavy infantry only. N is the number of non-individual friendly heavy infantry units within the flagger. So units near the flagger gives it a high rampage aura that it can hand out. God Speaker got stripped off its spell. Trudger on Wing Slasher unit strength 2. Yeah, mainly other than the flagger, mainly they are generic changes that just happen to hit them. And I think no one's interested in Orcs. Shall we move on?
I think the God Speaker is tied for the cheapest caster in the game, so I think that's definitely worth mentioning. And then, although his spells are more expensive because he gets the ability to increase the spells based off of the number of units, it actually makes the God Speakers pretty useful, because you can take, if you want to just build a wall of infantry and just try to heal from behind, then you can just build that out, and it's only a 60-point God Speaker that's getting that. Whereas before you had to pay for the other spell and that, so you're getting taxed. I think that's probably one of the biggest changes. I do think that Krudger on Wing Slasher in Orcs is, in my opinion, the best flyer in the game, the best dragon in the game. So like every other Titan going to unit strength 2, that's always beneficial. And I think that the orc just wog infantry spam list is getting even better because that flagger can just give out a huge rampage or a buff, because I think troops of infantry are severely underutilized, and they help not only the God Speaker but also the flagger now too. So there's no reason not to take both of those guys and just go ham with an infantry spam list.
Yeah, and there's no cap on the rampage, right? So
There is not. So
Max
Rampage
Rampage is-
10 sisters, look out.
troop spam.
Really get is like 7, and it's like weird geometry cramming in. Typically, you're probably looking at 4,
Yeah.
5.
A big box of them moving up the center of the table with the flagger in the middle.
Right.
Get it?
It's the other
I think you could get 9 easily, Joey. You're just not thinking outside the box.
Yeah, just corners in.
Got to be inside the box.
That's right.
The only sad thing is the plus 3 inches to your aura doesn't work on the counting for the rampage. If it worked on both, that would be A+, and then we could be talking some serious numbers.
Yeah, I think they need to amend that really quickly here.
Until I see Trowbridge running orcs and not dwarves, I will believe orcs are not that great. See them switch back.
He ran them at the most recent event that Kyle Poole.
Okay.
Yeah,
That wasn't with this, though. I won't count it.
it's true. It's not with this.
All right, moving on to the favorite cousins, Forged Orcs. So they gain certain unit entries from the Orc list. But before that, Storm Strike rule, all natural hit rolls of 6s, blast 2. And what changed here? This does not affect if the unit needs more than a 6 to hit.
Change there was it used to work on Alchemist Curse. So if you
So it's now in melee.
It's melee only. Yeah.
caster with Storm Strike used to be able to take Alchemist Curse and get the blast on it.
Right. Okay. You are able to take Godspeed at Gore Chariots.
Excuse me.
You get a Stormbringer on Gore Chariot, new profile, 5 attack chariot. And War Drums, you get War Drums. It rallied 2 on Orcs and rallies 1 on Riftforged. But you can take multiple of these War Drums to get rally 2 in total. Thunderseers just got the redeploy wording. Storm Giant, unit strength 2. Stormcaller got its base spell removed. Stormbringer on Wind Slasher, unit strength 2. The Stormforged Shrine, unit strength 2, and gets Spell Ward, so it does not crumble to, it does not cry at Hex anymore. Thundra Wolves gain Pathfinder. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the War Drums, right? Now, with the potential of getting +2 nerf in your entire army, it's probably juicy. On top with the Hell Strikers, is probably what the chatter is all about right now.
I don't think it works with the Hell Strike just because they're so fast.
Yeah.
I don't know that it works
But-
with the Hell Strikers as much, but I still don't have any problem with taking 110 points, throw it on a chariot, just run it as your chaff piece. Similar to the way you run Longhorns in Herd.
Yeah.
You can do
Yeah.
a very, very similar job.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, this is a dread source that the army can gain as well, which is pretty useful. There's not very much brutal in the list, so
Yeah, you've got a Cloak of Death on the Storm Giant, so you can pair it.
Yep.
It could pair it with Hell Strikers already, but the War Drum, I think, gives a lot of fun tools. You can play slower with War Drum than you could with the old Riftforge.
yeah, it just screams take the infantry line with this, because you just rally everything up. The shrine is there too, so
Fury.
you're giving Aura Fury. Then you have all the spell buffs that you can give out from the shrine. And their flagger is the same, isn't it? Where it gets the rampage aura.
Let me take a look.
Yeah.
Yep, they inherited it.
I think there's a build here.
I'm not a huge fan of the new Chariot Hero. I kind of feel like for that points, you just take the Manticore, who costs the same, and then flies. You lose a shooting attack, but you get 2 extra speed. I think that's a little bit more valuable.
Yeah, but the shooting attack was only a 12-inch range and you're hitting on 5. So are you really losing anything?
Yeah.
With
think
5
you're just gonna bring
attacks.
it in.
Yeah, I agree. It's just better.
Is-
Getting access to that God Speaker as well, a cheap caster option is pretty spicy.
The Gore Chariots could be pretty fun. They can bring the War Drum. They can support it with the Shrine. I feel like Riftforged are in a pretty reasonable spot. I'm going to be curious to see where they end up overall.
Yeah, they haven't gotten unlocked as an army, I feel.
Yeah. My only complaint when it comes to Riftforged is Storm Strike is still on like 3 units total.
They added a unit to get Storm Strike. It's just the caster that has 1 attack and now can't use it with its spells.
Yeah. If it was on the Chariot, that would give it like a thing versus the Manticore.
Right.
True.
Okay, now time for Joey's favorite list. The Ratkin shock troops, the plague pot options got cheaper. The halberd options got cheaper. Spears, they got cheaper, but the unit strength stayed at 95 points. Why? Okay, anyway. Warriors, plague pots got cheaper. Scurriers, what changed here? Remove duelist. Attacks, did it get higher?
Their attacks went up, they lost duelists, and I think their points went down.
Okay, and they have stealthy. Plague pots option, which are cheaper as well. Vermintide, unit strength of Legion becomes 3. Were they 1 before?
All swarms are 1. So
Right.
this is
And the Endless Swarm, they have rarely 1 vermin only and are not considered irregular. Legions of Vermintides. Interesting. Mutant Rat Fiend, unit strength 2. And friendly core vermin units without the abomination keywords regain D3 wounds instead of 1 from Radiance of Life. Warlock, I think Warlock got cheaper by quite a bit, right? It was 90 and now it's 75 if you take the Lightning Bolt again. So Night Terror is now a monster with rallying 1, which makes that a little bit more interesting. Swarmcry gets Aura Elite Melee Tech only and very inspiring, which is interesting because there's quite a lot of tech in the list. Tangle gets unit strength 2, which is awesome. Also considered a vermin because they have lots of little rats underneath. Scott Good is cheaper and unit strength 2. Has the formation changed? Let's see.
It
hasn't?
just clarified the employee rule.
Right. Okay. Joey, take it away.
All right. Well, there's only a handful of changes here that I really want to talk about. The absolute biggest one is going to be the Night Terror moving to the monster slot. Prior to that, the monster slot was like 180 points at a minimum. It's kind of hard to use. Impaler is okay. I think it works better in Ratkin Slaves where they have a hero designed to actually run with the Impaler. And the Spewer, when it's not in the formation, doesn't have steady aim, so you don't really want to use it there. So the Night Terror being in that monster slot, you got a nice 135 point rally unit. So what I think you're going to see a lot of Ratkin lists like myself, I probably don't run Scud anymore because I can just take 3 Night Terrors, get that high speed, get even more rallying than I used to get with Scud, more strength, and it's 60 points more than I was spending for that dragon. I think that's probably the biggest one. The Swarm Choir change, it's hard to say, would probably be my number 2. Elite Melee Tech just makes your nice old Nightmares and your Tunnel Runners. Your Nightmares turn into the old school 2nd editions. Shock Troops, Elite and Vicious, Crush 1, gives them nice consistency, but more importantly on Tunnel Runners, I'm already spending points on Sharpness and Strider on 1, so making them Elite Melee just ensures that they're going to kill what they hit, which is kind of the idea when you're spending 200 points on them. Overall, I think Ratkin get a little bit better. Plague Pots getting cheaper is just nice. The Shock Troops do get a lot cheaper overall. I think they shave 10 points in the Hordes because you're usually taking both at this point. So if you're running 2 hordes of them, you shave 20 points. That's going to allow you to kind of buy some.
Do you buy the halberds on the shock troops?
I think you do at this point.
Previously, no, right?
No, but they've gotten so much cheaper because I think there were 20 points at the start of 3rd, then they got a price drop, and now they've gotten another price drop.
Now it's 10 points, yeah.
So I think at this point with shocks, you might as well just take it.
It's your answer to Green Lady.
The only other thing I wish I saw was the Shredders go back to their old profile. If Castle Champ launchers get to have that profile, why do Shredders have to take the shitty ignore cover rule? That would make the formation way more viable. But I think Ratkin overall, they're in kind of a B+ territory. They're very good, kind of balanced. I'm not expecting to see a Vermintide build, as fun as that would be. It's a fun idea, rallying up the mutant rat fiends to rally up the Vermintide, but
more of a fluffy thing than anything else.
I had some like weird ideas where you put sharpness on a Legion of Vermintide and try to run that, but I never actually did it.
Yeah, I think Joey's spot on. The Night Terror is the biggest winner here because it's just so clean when you have 3 infantry hordes. You unlock your Tangle plus 2 Night Terrors, 3 hero choices that, pick your choice. And then 3 weapons teams that you absolutely want to take. So it just really works out well. And you got a ton of rally between the 2 Night Terrors, the 3 Hordes, and then you probably take 1 Brood Enforcer in there for another source of rally, as well as Tangle. So you're sitting at, 6 to 8 rally sources with just that core, and then throw in, whatever you want on top of that.
It works even if you're using Nightmares as your unlock base, because you still get use out of that monster slot. But I think it fits into either build style.
All right. With that, let's move on to Salamanders as well. Could anyone would like to read the changes?
That's more than a full page.
There's a few changes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sure. I'll read through it. So the Salamanders got an updated army special rule, so new keywords. Fireborn, so for each friendly core unit with the Inferno keyword within 6 inches, this unit gains Radiance of Life +1 up to a maximum of 3. So Ceremonial Guard got reduced in points, and they gained the Fireborn's special rule, as well as Effigy of Fire option. Salamander Primes, also same thing, reduced in points, gain Fireborn special rule. Unblooded, points adjusted with Fireborn. Corsairs, they went up in attacks to 10 and 12, and they gain Fireborn, as well as an option for the Effigy of Fire. Fire Elementals have the Inferno keyword. Lancers have the Fire rule with an Effigy of Fire option. Rhino Cap have an option for Effigy of Fire. Scorch Wings went up in points, as we've seen. A Greater Fire Elemental has the Inferno keyword and has the following option. Rally 1 for Fire Element only for 10 points, which I believe, from what I'm looking at here, is not a unique option. So you can take multiple Greater Fire Elements to get multiple sources of rally for that Fire Elemental build. And he has, I don't know if I mentioned, he has the Inferno keyword. Fire have unit strength 2 now and the Inferno keyword. Gecko to Slashers adjust in points to 215, and they gain Rally 1 for Gekata only. We have also an option for a Sharp Stick Thrower with Tox Bolts, which gives them Vicious Range and Piercing 3 for an additional 10 points. Phoenix Change, as before, unit strength 2, 15, 17 nerve for the baby one. Big one stays the same. Captain has Fireborn special rule and gains a ranged option for Brace of Pistols. Range 4 up, Piercing 1 for 15 points. It's a 12-inch range, and it can't be taken with a mount. Clan Lord has the Fireborn special rule, also gains the same range option and the same limitation with no mounts available. Herald has Aura Wild Charge 2 for heavy infantry only. He also has the Fireborn and Very Inspiring rule. And Mage Priest goes to 60 points, dropping its spell, gains the Fireborn special rule. I don't know when you can get Life Leech 3 out of a 1-attack hero, and removes Fireball 10, but you can buy it back for its 30 points. Clan Lord on Fire Drank is unit strength 2, and it is the one thing that has Fire and Inferno keyword, which my understanding is that it can trigger its own keyword at this point. So you can gain Life Leech 1 off of yourself. Firebrand has the Fireborn keyword, and Rakaz the Rider, Pale Rider, is unit strength 2 and has the Inferno keyword.
Quite a mouthful of changes.
Yeah. I think the biggest one is Greater Fire Elemental gaining Rally 1 for Fire Elementals for 10 points. Yeah, if you're taking a Fire Elemental build, this is the army to do it in.
I wonder why Forces of Nature didn't get this upgrade on the Greater Fire. But yeah, it's a mix of elementals in
Salamander on the box when they sell the Greater Fire Elemental. It doesn't say Force of Nature.
Right. Well, Salamanders has been pretty weak in 2nd edition. It started out 3rd edition not bad, and it has just been getting better and better and better with every Clash update. I think it's really very interesting right now with that Inferno and Fire synergy as well. Basically, you're just getting wound mitigation, wound recovery abilities for not much cost as long as you're just mixing it up. You're able to get free life leech across the army, right?
Yeah, this is going to be my army for next year. That got it mostly assembled right behind me. The only thing I'm currently kind of tweaking around is whether or not I actually use the Corsairs and Firebrand. I like the Corsairs for 24 shots, Pierce 1, hit on 4s. 170 points is a lot for a single regiment, especially when you're putting 120 point tax just to get them to unlock. So I'm going to play test it around, see if I like it. I might swap it out for Regiments of Ceremonial Guard and just run that instead. Get some nice Phalanx Life Leech. But I absolutely love the changes here. The Inferno makes the infantry so much more viable, particularly the Ceremonial Guard, throwing Phalanx and Life Leech and Defense 5. Very good combination of rules. And Dash 19 Fire Elemental Hordes are good, as it turns out. That's a very good combo.
I mean, I'm looking at Dash 16 regiments. That's just disgusting. They effectively can go up to a horde profile. They're only 9 attacks, but I mean, between them and the the graders you have, somebody's getting surged into a flank somewhere.
You can back that up still with your Phoenixes. I'm currently just running 1 Phoenix, but heal 5 Radiance of Life is kind of all you need as a baseline. The Clanlord and Fire Drake, I think, is the other big change, mostly because it gets all of the rules. So depending on where you are in the combat, you can just have the 17-19 Life Leech 3 Dragon. I think you're going to still run it with Sharpness. Just you run 1, you take Sharpness on it. It'll be 325, and you're going to be happy with your 15 attack Dragon that has Life Leech 1 to 3.
Is it within 6 inches of itself, though? I got a feeling it isn't, but...
It is. It was rewritten, actually, from the book.
Yeah, I think it's been answered on a page somewhere.
Right, okay. So it just starts off at Life Leech 1, which is awesome.
This unit gains Life Leech +1 for each friendly core unit, including itself, with the Inferno keyword.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's huge. Ridiculous. Also, we should mention the Effigy of Fires that can go on all these things. That is one of, if not the best army upgrade available, especially a 5-point upgrade. It's effectively just D3 extra hits because you get to reroll D3 failed wound.
Yeah.
For 5
it's better than
points.
Vicious. You just reroll failed wounds.
It's a lot better than
you get to choose to do it after you see the results to wound.
So you can choose to not pop it if you've already done enough wounds.
Exactly. Or, you do a really bad roll and you're like, man, I really need my Life Leech to go off this turn. I'm going to reroll D3 wounds now and get the Life Leech 3 that I've been banking on.
It's much easier to get these higher Life Leeches in this sort of list too, isn't it? Whereas the other auras are going to have a hard time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, you just naturally mix up the unit choices and list construction. You're not really hamstringing yourself much, but you just get the free Life Leech across your army.
The only thing to note is the Rhinosaurs do not benefit from any of it, and they've previously been kind of the best non-elemental unit in Salamanders, so they're not going to gain this. They're still dash in large calf, but
that's my minor gripe with this. That's my minor gripe with these keywords again. Yeah,
the Tyrants also got left out, and I think they're on par, if not better, than the Rhinosaurs.
Hey, the Tyrants have been mostly driven extinct in Salamander players. When Gladestalkers came around, it was just hard to keep them around. Although I haven't seen them since Phoenixes came or got their buff, so that could be just some untapped attack.
If you're running a wall of infantry, Tyrants are an excellent second line.
They are. They hit really hard, and they do get to take an item. On top of that, you get to put the Effigy of Fire on top of it.
One thing to keep in mind, the Herald does not stack with the Greater Fire Elemental's other aura that it can buy for 10 points. I'm pretty sure they're not going to stack. That should be in the FAQ. So the Greater Fire Elemental's original aura was Wild Charge +1 for Salamander keyword. I don't believe that's going to stack with the Herald's aura.
Because auras
because the same keyword for the aura, in this case Wild Charge, you only choose one.
Now, that's relevant for like Unblooded, who get Wild Charge D3. They're going to want the Greater Fire Elemental, while Prize
is a +1.
It's also going to be relevant once we get to Undead.
All these are minor inconsistencies that I do hope gets cleaned up for the benefit of newer players. All right, let's look at the Trident. Changes, Ensnarers got cheaper, Hard Piercers got cheaper, Worm Riders got cheaper, probably because it's a regenerating unit. The Titans are unit strength 2. The Envoy, which is the standard bearer of the Trident realms, gets Aura, Fury, Infantry, and Heavy Infantry only, and very inspiring. Fury sounds awesome. All right, 2 Aquamage, strip off the useless Icy Breath, which I think opens it up quite a bit. And that's all of its changes. Jeff, thinking about Trident Realm.
Yeah, no, well, again, it's just ones where you're getting things a little bit cheaper. There's not sweeping changes for them. But yeah, like most of the armies, some of them have got a bit of a price decrease. It does make the Aquamage a little bit more playable, I agree, removing that, because Icy Breath wasn't used very often at all. The Envoy, too, I used to run him quite often. I gather he still gets Bastion. I'm not 100% sure. But you used to have to pay for the upgrade to get the Fury. But now that you get it and you've got very inspiring, he'll come into lists a lot more often.
It has Bastion too as a spell.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't say anything about that disappearing. So I think he'll come into play a lot more.
That is pretty spicy.
Yeah, it is. It's very good, especially for your, I'm terrible with names, your cheaper units, your Thule and stuff like that, because that is one of their problems, is wavering in combat. So I've run it and paid for the upgrade. Now I'm going to get it all for free. So
it used to have to pay for that Fury
That's
upgrade,
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
and I don't know, placoderms are looking pretty spicy.
Yeah,
You can
I was going to say, them as well. They're going to
15, 17 after Bastion, and they have Fury, and, they're really hard to move anyway.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't get a downgrade in price because they've got Phalanx. But
It was only
decreases
defense
for
5 and lower.
fair enough.
It was only non-Blackodem units with Phalanx.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough.
Are there any defense 6 units with Phalanx other than Blackodems?
Just
They are,
placoderms.
but
Yeah.
if you run them, you'll know that they don't put out much damage. So they're not always the first choice. They're actually one of the lower on the list when you play Trident. They're decent, but
So I think the Naiad Envoy's Fury Aura actually really benefits the other amazing infantry heroes that these guys have access to. Being able to get Fury and get back into combat with Thule Mythicans and
that's true.
Your
Yeah.
Centurion is pretty useful.
Yep, definitely.
Hector as well.
Yeah, Hector would definitely love a Fury Aura.
Yep.
Right. They are the first army that's going to be updated next year. So there will be sweeping changes, I think. The new kits seem to be teased to be around the River Guard. So they are the frog creatures. So I think we'll see.
I've heard wild ideas. So we'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yep, probably
12 frogs here.
So we'll probably see a buffs in the Tree Leapers and their Dam Busters and whatnot. The River Guard Sentinel. All right, with that, we are moving on to the final army, Undead. The Skeleton Spearmen got cheaper. The Warriors get to drop to Defense 3 for Crush 1 for free. Revenants, they get to drop to Defense 4 and Crush 1 for free. Werewolves got cheaper. Undead Standard Bearer, Defense became 5. Aura, Wild Charge D3, Skeleton only. Very inspiring. Necromancer got stripped of its Search 6. And Lich King, amend points to 6. Remove Regeneration Plus and Fly Special Rule. Is this change also in Empire of Dust?
No, because we don't have a Lich King.
Right. Okay. So remove Search 10. You can buy Search 10 separately. And on these dead creatures all sound the same to me. Revenant on Undead Great Burrowing Worm, amend unit strength to 2. King on Undead Great Flying Worm, unit strength 2, 255 points. Vamp on Dragon is unit strength 2, 300 points. Jarvis, I think, got cheaper, 120 points. Morgoth changed a little bit. Amend it to 200 points. Unholy Levitation's unique special rule. It can move in a double and still cast spells. And I think it can cast 2 spells per turn.
Yeah. Morgoth, the mandatory, they're calling him.
I'm not sure.
He is extremely good now.
Yeah.
He was Morgoth the Mandatory at the start of 3rd edition
Yep.
with a
That's
very
true.
high drain life, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Nice.
speed 10 fly, so effect speed 20 cast spell, speed 20 drain life with dread built in too. He
It
was
was like
nuts.
Drain Life 10.
Yeah,
Left 10.
it was ridiculous. He was better than the Soul Snare, which it should not be allowed.
Right.
Coming
Adam.
from an NDP player.
Let me have my toys, okay?
Yeah, fair enough.
Jarvis is in shambles right now.
Jarvis that's an addition change. I feel like we got rid of allies for competitive play, and Jarvis, that was his old thing. So
Right. Adam, anything to say about this? Like Empire of Dust and Undead? Quite similar, right? They all did things.
I think the biggest takeaway, obviously, Morgoth, I think, is number one. Number two is the Army Standard Bearer, the Wild Charge D3 for Skeleton. That was what I played against Tom recently, Tom Anus. And so he was doing a bunch of Revenants, Cavalry, which have Skeleton keyword. The Kings on Worms, as well as the Flying Worms, they have the Skeleton keyword. So there's a lot of potential benefit for that D3 aura. And this is where the not being able to stack auras comes into play, because if you had multiples of these guys, then you get 2d3 additional wild charge or 3d3 wild charge, and it can get crazy. But I think my favorite possibility out of this whole thing is taking a Revenant King on Flying Worm, give him Brew of Haste, and then have him roll for a wild charge D3 at the top of turn 1 and get a charge off without any scouts happening. Then charge threat.
Yeah, that's...
Just
it's funny.
He will die.
It's not good. It's funny. It's just going to be funny is all it is. So that's where you would play for redeploy guys. I would pay 5 points to redeploy that guy wherever I wanted.
Just be looking out for your standard bearer, that's all.
That's true. But standard bearer can get mounted. So, 16-inch movements plus the 6-inch aura range. So it can cover a pretty fair distance.
Yeah, that cans that idea of mine. I'll be deploying
The
10-inch out or something.
The Lich King changes are also really, really strong. It lost like 90 points of stuff that just did nothing on it. So you being able to take it for 80, 120 for Surge 10 is actually kind of reasonable. Or I think it's 110 for Heal 6 now. Double checking that.
Yeah.
For Heal 6, which is still not bad by itself. So I think Undead they didn't get a whole lot of but they got a lot of tricks and they got a lot more options in their hero slots, which is nice for them.
Yeah. I think Morgoth is the one you'll see. Lich Kings are just really tough to squeeze in, I feel like, because Necromancers are so cheap. Morgoth is so effective and good at his higher points. He's effectively 2 casters. So
yeah, I could see a Morgoth 1 Lich King and run that, especially if you're not taking zombies. If you're running all skeletons and you don't need the neck.
But then again, your Undead Army Standard Bearer with the Surge item is like 80 points or 70 points there. And yeah, it's only Surge 5, but I would probably err on that instead of a Lich King for 120.
Yeah, I think where you'll see the Lich King is that's going to be taking an Alchemist Curse and it's going to roll around with Morgoth.
That's true.
How fast is he?
Speed 7.
But yeah, once you kit him out with Alchemist Curse, and like you said, he's the fastest thing that could take Boots of Levitation. It's a pretty pricey character.
It is, but it's a lot more usable than the 160 point Lich King you used to take before you put anything on it.
That's true. I agree. It is an improvement.
Yeah, it's interesting. Spellcaster level 3, so at least it unlocks options without being over the top expensive. And with that, I think we're done with Undead. That's all the armies. Just a very quick talk about the scenarios. Push, we alluded to it earlier. Right now, you cannot hold more than 1 loot counter for the purpose of scoring, but seems like you could still carry more than 1. And then you can play a game of distributing them afterwards by dropping them on the ground, letting another unit pick it up. Hold the Line is a interesting one. It's like a control, but only 3 zones across the middle. Piles of loot tokens that you can slowly pick up the tokens over. Do you guys like the push change and the 2 new scenarios?
I've seen it.
Yeah, I think all of these changes are for the better. The hold the line is a scenario that has been around for a while, I feel like, in tournaments that kind of do their own scenarios. And it's always gone over very well as a better version of dominate effectively. And then stockpile, I think, is just it should eventually replace loot, where it is effectively loot. It's just that you can't win the game by doing a cheeky, scout onto it, and then first turn grab and then just walk away with 2 tokens. You actually have to hold and pick up the tokens over multiple turns. So it almost introduced the ability to score progressive scoring effectively, but I think it's a good balance because it's not truly progressive scoring where somebody could just be held out from the game if they're not able to get onto it fast enough. So I actually really think stockpile is just a better loot scenario all in all. And I hope that we see in tournament play that loot just goes away and stockpile is the choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think loot's one of the scenarios that can be very unfair. Turn one's such a massive advantage and certain armies massive advantage.
And in extension to that, plunder as well, right? Plunder is just super loot.
Now, plunder is better than loot. But my gripe with plunder is I want all the tokens to start out at being 2 points, and then each of you upgrade a token to be worth 3 points. So that way it's not just a fight over these 2 2-point loot tokens. If you hold both of those, you win the game. If you hold 2 3-point tokens and the other person controls all the other 3, it's just a draw.
Yeah, I'm mixing it up. I was thinking the other one. One where you get the 6 inches from the center line.
The burn load, that one is raise.
The raise,
that's the one. Yeah.
You burn it and you score it.
I haven't seen loot in at least the Mid-Atlantic for a solid 2 years. Like since plunder was introduced, that's been the go-to for loot tokens. It's just better.
Yeah, it is definitely.
I haven't tried stockpile yet, but I have tried hold the line, and hold the line I like a lot.
Yeah.
Hold
the line is great because it's kind of like the new dominate or control where you're just like, let's play an easy scenario that we don't have to pull out tokens and measure and all that. It's just there.
It was at Nerdhammer. I had a pretty bad experience because the way it was written out explaining it was really not good for round 5. And I had an awful lot of beers, and trying to learn how to orient the scenario without a picture was very hard given the description. But once I understood it, I really like it. I actually think it's kind of like it feels more like an alternative invade to me because you're kind of doing the same thing. It's about establishing that dominance on the middle line and playing around that. I think it fits that nice middle ground of like a dominate, control, invade. It's a spot that hasn't been played before.
Right. I think it should become a new norm. I put it right up there with those 3 scenarios, which I think are just classics for Kings of War.
Like you said, it does the 2s and 3s. So if you win the middle, you don't win the game.
Yep.
You can play it on both ends.
Which are the classic 3 you're referring to, Adam?
Dominate, control, invade.
Right. Yeah, I played hold the line. It was really fun. My opponent held the left, I held the right, and then we were like, okay. At first I was thinking, okay, I need to spend some units to hold the right and then put some units to hold the middle. Then it came to me that, oh, wait a minute. Just as long as I hold the middle, I win. So I just rushed everything into the middle. Yeah. So it became a bit of a dominate at that point.
Yeah. And I think you will see that quite a bit, but the opportunities to play it differently and strategically are definitely there.
Yeah. All right. With that, the rest of it, ambush scenarios, they're all very fluffy, very thematic for people looking for thematic games.
The cavalry, it's ambush. You'll win.
We're not going to go into the details of that. And yeah, we have come to the end of this mammoth episode. Thank you everyone for staying with me. I know we have gone much further than what we have expected. And we'll just quickly close out the show by just going around for any shout outs that you might have. Lee, I would like to shout out, or rather introduce Adam. He has his YouTube channel called Masterside, which does all his competitive play analysis. So Adam, do talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's been almost exactly a year since I started, but I have my entire last year's worth of tournament games. So every tournament I went to, every competitive game I played has been documented. I got pictures and everything to remember all the wins and losses. So I usually try to keep it pretty quick, between 30 to 45 minutes for a battle report. Sometimes we go over, but usually we're right in there, and try to just get to the goods of strategic thoughts and really how I saw the game at the beginning, how it progressed throughout the game, and if my initial game plan saw us to victory or not. So try to keep it very tactical and high level thinking.
Awesome. So I'll just go around all of us, and what are we going to be up to in the following few months? Like, what army are you preparing? What tournaments have you just attended or going out for? Just very quickly, Joey?
Well, I am building my salamanders. My personal goal for this year is I want to get the only trophy I'm missing, which is a player's choice. So I'm going to really try for that, work on my hobby game an awful lot. Next event I'm going to be going to is either Peachtree GT down in Atlanta, Georgia, or I'll be going to Pilgrimage in Philadelphia.
What are the rough dates for those?
Peachtree does not have a date yet, which is why I may or may not be going, because if they don't tell me, I'm not going to go. But Pilgrimage should be the first weekend of March in Philly. It's got a new location, so it used to be downtown Philly, literally across from where the Phillies and the 76ers play, but I don't know where the new hotel is off the top of my head.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. Jeff?
I've got Clash of Kings end of January for tournament coming up. I'll mainly be working on the Abyssals or Forces of Abyss and Abyssal Dwarves because I've got the armies there. There's a few things we've got to finish off on, some of the cavalry, etc. But yeah, I would have loved to have come over the pilgrimage again, but I've got to go into hospital around that time, so I just can't risk of going in. So nothing dire. So yeah, that's about it for me.
Adam?
The next event for me is Kings of Winter out of Springfield, Missouri. I believe it's the second weekend in January, 13th, 14th, if I remember correct. Yeah, and as far as armies go, I'm going to be playing probably quite a bit of UB and empty bases just to see if there's something I want to build up this year. I haven't decided yet at all, but I got a couple lists in mind, so we'll see if any of them are worth building over my already established Empire of Dust, which is going to be definitely something I'll play throughout the year.
So your default is Empire of Dust, and you're looking to see whether you're interested to play a different army?
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, thank you. For myself, going to Clash of Kings Asia, the first ever one in mid of January. I think it's the 13th. Will be held in Malaysia. And between Singaporeans, Malaysians, and a few others in the region, I think we have 24 players, which we have capped out already. So in future, if there's a bigger space, we might be able to invite Australians or even Americans over, because the plan is to purposely time it close to Clash of Kings Australia so that people from other continents can consider coming down to this part of the world to take part in 2 tournaments. And yeah, I have my Goblin army done early. I've already completed it, which was quite a surprise. And I think I'll be playing it throughout the first half of next year at least. And I am going back to preparing my Forces of the Abyss army for when there is the update. I'm actually doing up the display board for the Forces of the Abyss army since I'm waiting for the update to decide what to play. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I would like to shout out to my patrons: 1 Pete Anonymous, 2 Pete Luke Schaefer and Thomas Douglas, and 4 Pete Alessandro Serpe. Thank you for helping to support the channel to keep it alive. I tend to try to provide tactical analysis to the game to help everyone improve as players. You can check me out on patreon.com/newbiedice. And yeah, check out my Battle Reports YouTube channel as well as Adam's master site. And also shout out to one of our players who's going through medical treatment right now, Herms. Hope he's getting better by the day. And with that, I would like to close out the show. And goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye. You can say bye-bye.